Hello, and welcome to episode 10 of the Luckycast. I'm your host, DeoxysPrime, and joining me on this podcast, we got Frank.
Mesdames, Monsieur, bonsoir.
I forgot you were going to do that. Matt.
Hi.
Collin.
Hiya.
And Funk.
Hello. Steve, quick question.
Yes.
So, this is the 10th episode, right? You just said that?
Yes, I did. I know where this is going.
I'd be surprised if you did. So does that mean that this is some kind of anniversary for the Luckycast, like the gold or the silver anniversary? What medal anniversary are we?
So I didn't expect that. But that actually kind of led into what I was going to say, because this is officially, we're now in the third year of the Luckycast, so...
Hey.
What, 10 episodes in under, or 2-ish years?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I mean, doing one every, 3 months, it adds up to that,
oh my
so...
god. Just call us Doc Hammer.
But, we're changing things up this year. We got some new stuff coming. Including this very podcast, which is our very first mid-season podcast, by popular demand. I mean, you laugh, but there's that one guy from the anime board who asked us to do more podcasts, so here we are.
What's his name?
Wraith94, I think. Shout out to him.
Hey.
So yeah, we're gonna do a mid-season podcast, and it's gonna have a bit of a different format from our end-season podcast. We actually have organized segments to mix things up a bit.
Much like a centipede.
I don't follow.
Let's go on.
You know nothing about insects? Jesus.
Yeah, jeez. I apparently not. But no, our first segment is going to be the anime recommendation segment. So for this podcast, which is covering, I should say, the winter 2016 anime season, everyone in this chat is going to give a recommendation for one anime that they think people should watch. And if you could, just describe a bit about that anime, what it's about, why you would recommend it to people, and then after that, anyone in here who's maybe watched that anime also can chime in with their thoughts too. So since I did not decide at all who's going to go first, do I have any volunteers?
I'll go first.
Oh, well, that was quick.
Oh, geez.
I anticipated Steve asking for volunteers, so I was eagerly listening for him to give the cue.
You're always an eager beaver.
Yes. Well, it's more fun when I get to butt out other people. It's not enough that I should succeed. Others should fail. But anyway, well, what I wanted to recommend for this season, and I should note that, at least for my recommendation, that these aren't necessarily there's 5 of us, so the 5 absolute best shows airing this season, but 5 shows that are worth checking out that people might not necessarily be watching. Because there's some great shows, but if everybody's watching them, it's not entirely worth recommending them. But anyway, I digress. So, what I wanted to recommend is a show that's already finished. It's already done airing by the mid-season, which is Tabi Machi Late Show. It's a show that has 7-minute episodes, and there's only 4 of them. So it came and went very quickly. And to be honest, I wouldn't even say that this is a great show. I gave it a 7 out of 10 on Mal. And looking back on it, I think that score is fine. But I did want to recommend it to people because I do think it's worth watching, mostly because it is such a low opportunity cost to watching it. You can finish all 4 episodes in about half of an hour. A little more when time to download them, but the thing is, the show, it's very content with what it is. It doesn't try and round out a full season when it knows it doesn't have that much to say. It doesn't try to expand the episodes to be longer than they need to be. It just has one goal, and it gets in and gets out, and it does it. And what it's trying to do is just tell 4 disconnected little, not even really stories, more like scenarios.
Like vignettes?
Vignettes is a great word for it. That all deal with relationships in a way that either them ending or them beginning. And a lot of the stories, except for the third one, which was the ending of which was a complete misfire for me. But since this is a recommendation, I don't want to spoil it. But the other ones all felt very natural and very real. There's particularly in the very first episode, there's a great moment at the very end of it that is perfectly set up and executed just over 7 minutes. That really, hits home emotionally. It's great because you're able to care for characters that you only see for such a short time, and you're just never going to see again. But you relate to the relationship that they're forming. You can think back to your own life when you've had a similar situation, because I'm pretty sure all these are written to be very just generally relatable. Obviously they can't set up that many details with such a short time, which works in its favor, because the way that they make you feel anything is by, again, looking back on your own life. Because if they were trying to do it all within the 7-minute show without any other help, it wouldn't work. So it works very well. They identified what they needed to do to deliver an emotional reaction, and it feels nice. It's not without flaws, the show. It has, aside from the one relationship aspect of it, it doesn't have anything else going on. It has very little animation. It has very little music. There's no real plot. So it's not like I said at the very beginning, it's not amazing. It's not a super great show. But because it's so easy to just watch the entirety of it in 1 hour with breaks, and you might get something out of it emotionally, I would say it's worth recommending to just about anybody.
So was there anything that like prompted you in particular to watch this? Because it seems like the most overlooked thing this season by far.
Well, I typically, and I think I've used this expression before on the podcast, but when every new anime season starts airing, I tend to cast a wide net in regards to what I watch. I'd rather watch more shows and drop a number of them than watch fewer shows and miss something good. So I just picked this up because it was something that aired. And to be honest, when I watched the first episode, I kind of didn't watch it. Like, I was just paying attention, but I didn't really get what was going on. Like, I expected it to lead into a story arc of some sort, because I didn't know how many episodes there were. I didn't know anything about it. It wasn't until when I went back and rewatched it that I was able to kind of view everything in the correct context, and it worked much more effectively at that point for me. I think I'm the only one here who's watched it.
I have watched the first 2 episodes of the Tabi Machi Late Show. I completely forgot that it existed for a while, and every time you would bring it up when we would have it in like the private messages stuff that we had prior to this, that you were going to do Tabi Machi Late Show, and I was reminded of Tabi Machi's existence. I was like, oh yeah, I should probably catch up on Tabi Machi Late Show, and then I forgot again. So that's not to say that I did not enjoy those first 2 episodes, especially the second one. I like the second one a lot.
Yeah.
It's just, when you want slice of life, Tabi Machi is probably about as a organic slice of life you could get.
But I completely agree with that, but I think it's worth qualifying that, because when you say slice of life, it's very easy for your mind to conjure up images of, moe shit and straight comedies.
Mm-hmm.
And this show is not moe. It's not at all a comedy.
Yes.
But it is very extremely slice of life. And that's probably this show's greatest strength, how true to life it is.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I'll probably watch the last 2 episodes.
It's a very heavy 15-minute investment that you have to make to finish it.
Assuming I don't forget about them. We'll see in 6 weeks. Come 6 weeks and we do the next podcast,
Is shellblade going to finish Tabi Machi Late Show? Tune in and find out.
I'm sure we'll all be waiting to find out that answer. Anything else you want to say on it, Funk?
No, that's basically it. Again, if you're at all curious, just go give it a watch. It's 7 minutes. It's very easy to watch. It's hard to regret it.
All right. Who wants to step up next?
Well,
I don't know.
geez. Well,
I'll go
like,
next.
okay, all right, Matt, you go next. But does Funk have any more recommendations? Are we cycling through, or are we just?
We're just doing one each.
Okay, all right.
And if there's anything else from this season you guys want to talk about, we can save that for the very end.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Okay. I went the same route as Funk did and just kind of chose a show that nobody else seemed to be watching, and that show is Ajin. So this show is a very strange show in a lot of ways. First off, it's fully, the whole thing is animated in CG, full CG. It, because of that, it's not particularly great looking. It's got kind of iffy frame rate at times, but it's serviceable enough that it really doesn't get in the way of the story. It's also a Netflix exclusive show, so you're not going to be finding anything on like, this isn't something that's going to be on like Crunchyroll or Funimation or whatever.
Not even
So
that. You should specify Netflix Japan, not even
Yeah,
US Netflix.
Netflix Japan is what I mean. So there's not really any official subs for it or anything. You can only, so you have to rely on fan subs, which there are now some pretty good ones to find. So it just leads to this show being a little difficult, a little bit like it requires a bit more research. But what the show is actually about is, first off, this show is very different from seemingly everything else this season in that it is very violent and very, I guess you could call it edgy. But
Would you call it edgy?
and it's somewhat edgy. Some of the moments are like kind of like I actually laughed out loud at some moments just because of how ridiculous they were with the violence. But
Are they played straight?
well, I think yeah, it's generally seems like it's supposed to be played straight. It's just, but it's just funny because of how over the top it can get. It's entertaining. It's not like stupid. It makes sense. It's just kind of silly in a way. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not like gory, super like ultra Saul shit or anything like that. It's just blood. But okay. What the show is actually about though, so Ajin they're humans that essentially can't die. If they're killed, they'll just regenerate, come back to life, which is kind of represented by like these little black particles appearing around their body and like regenerating anything that was damaged. They can still feel pain, and so if you were to like say cut off an Ajin's limb, it won't regenerate. They'll have to kill themselves first before it regenerates.
Jesus, that seems harsh.
Which actually comes into play in the show, and is something that they actually use to their advantage at times. But like the show, also the Ajin are like very rare. They're looked at essentially as monsters by society. They're like hunted down to be experimented on. There's like 100 million yen reward for their capture.
Were they monsters by mistake?
It seems like it. I don't know. Well, I feel like that's
Hasn't been explored yet, or
yeah, like it seems like it seems like they're humans that, well, basically, okay, I should explain that like Ajin have like these weird like kind of shadow ghost things that follow them that only they can see. Humans can't see them. Only other Ajin can see them. It's essentially stands, yeah. That is essentially what they are.
Whoa! Let's consult our stands expert, Frank. Does this qualify as stands?
If you can, well, stands have a very, very broad. Throughout the series, they're depicted incredibly differently. So it could be a stand, albeit a rather off the wall one.
Well, they're, I don't know, but anyways, like they're like these weird monsters things that kind of follow them, and I think they are what are causing these humans to be Ajin. I'm guessing there's something that causes them to like get attached to humans. I don't know, but
They're more like parasites.
I guess, but it's not really explained. But like, basically, the show is about this student named K, who basically he just wants to become a normal person. He's very studious. He's super into his studies. And like the show begins with him like looking at these like leaked videos of people experimenting on these Ajin on like the internet. And he gets really disturbed by it. They start talking about it in class, and he starts asking these kind of suspicious questions. And later on, when he's distracted while crossing the street, he gets hit by a truck and dies with a bunch of people watching him. Like friends and stuff around him.
So it's Yu Yu Hakusho.
I guess so, but he regenerates, comes back to life, of course, because it turns out, oh, he's an Ajin. So now he's on the run because everyone's trying to capture him.
Oh.
And he has like, apparently these Ajin have other powers. Like when this happens, he like just kind of screams out of fright. And apparently this scream just paralyzes everybody around him for a short period of time, which allows him time for it to escape. Whenever he gets like super angry about something happening around him, like you can like sometimes there'll be like monologues when things happen. Like he'll be like say somebody's like trying to attack his friend or something, and we're like, I hate this guy, or I'm dead, blah, and whatever. And his little ghost dude will like basically attack them. So he can kind of control, like, that's one thing that comes in later, is that you can control these weird black ghost things, and they can be used to kill people. Yeah,
it's more like a persona.
Whoa, wait. So they're only used to kill people if they're black?
Well, the Ajin are all just, they're all black.
Eh?
Do they operate independently, or is it like they have some degree?
So, I think, based off of what I've seen, it seems like they kind of operate independently, but they won't kill anything unless they're told to. They won't really do anything bad unless they're told to do something bad.
Okay, so it's almost like Stan's, kind of.
And like, what else was there in the show? Oh. Like, some of the edginess comes into play with like how they're like the stuff they're saying. Okay, well, also I should mention that he also has a friend who's like an old friend of his that he had to abandon for some reason. That's something else I'm guessing is going to come up later. But his friend is helping him escape. And like there's one part where a motorcyclist is chasing after them, and he like runs them off the road. K ends up with both of his legs broken, and he's like, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. So he sees a knife next to him, and he's like, well, so he just takes the knife, slices his throat, dies, and just comes back to life. His leg's perfectly fine.
That sounds metal as fuck.
It's pretty fucking great. It's kind of like that was like an example of a moment that where I just had to laugh just because it's like, Jesus Christ, this is like really this is actually kind of clever with this whole killing yourself thing.
So getting off some of the general just plot stuff there, is there anything else that you like about the show? Like, is there something that the CG does right, or?
Well, I will say, like, during like parts that kind of need to have good action, like the CG doesn't look bad at all. It's actually pretty good. I don't really think it necessarily adds much to the show. Like, I don't think, like, taking away the CG and just making it a traditional animation, like animated show, I don't think it would really change much at all, other than make it look better.
Right.
But,
Oh, I was just gonna follow up with another thing you mentioned earlier, because you mentioned that the show was violent, and
yes.
I know that is it just bloody, or is it gory? Like
It's
how?
just bloody. It's not
Okay.
like it's not like oh you see their guts or something like that. It's not like
especially considering like they'd have to model all that stuff for the
yeah.
gore.
It's just blood.
Mhm.
All it is blood.
Just buckets of it, and that's usually
not buckets, but
Oh.
it's definitely
Ducats?
it's disturbing. I will say like the most
we get some nice squibs going on.
yeah like there's the most recent
Ooh.
episode was actually legitimately unnerving with what happens in it because essentially they're torturing this.
Whoa.
Okay, well whatever.
Now I'm a little interested in the show now. So
I'm not gonna I won't say anything else, but it actually is legitimately unnerving. The characters are very interesting as well. Like you have this one guy with glasses and his partner who are like part of the people experimenting on these people and trying to capture them. You have this old guy who is like trying to help Kay as well, but he also is really kind of creepy and disturbing and clearly has ulterior motives in mind. But it's there's like one guy who seems to just hate humans and like essentially has to kind of hold back has to hold back from killing people.
Mm-hmm.
But it is oh well that's another thing I almost forgot about. The show also has a really great soundtrack. Like the music used,
we want the funk audience.
well, it's not that kind of.
It's not funkcore.
No, it's just very fitting.
It's not Kazooie Core.
So
No.
when you say the soundtrack, do you mean like the incidental music or the openings and the endings or both?
The opening's good. The ending's okay, but the actual I'm mainly talking about the actual music used for the scenes and everything.
The background music.
Yeah, the background music. It's very good.
Hmm.
But yeah, I would definitely check this out because it's very different from everything else airing this season, and it is a legitimately clever, fun, and bloody, and very edgy show.
I was holding myself back from checking it out because I wanted there to be shows that people were recommending that I hadn't watched. But yeah, I'll definitely give it a watch.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, do you guys mind if I segue off of that then into my choice?
No,
Well, you kind of killed all fluidness of
I
the
don't mind
segue
at
by
all.
I know
asking.
I did. Okay, so going from a show that no one but Matt here is watching, I'm going to talk about a show that everyone I think here is watching. And my recommendation for the season, and I guess because of that, this is mostly going to be geared towards our audience, all two of them. But my recommendation for the season is Dimension W. Did you just spit, Frank?
Yeah.
Oh my god, Frank, my brother, kindred spirit.
We got a tough guy over here. Oh, jeez.
Frank, you got to stop spitting and you got to stop saying ew.
No.
Yes.
I will
okay.
never stop saying that. I'll never stop saying this, that, the other thing.
Okay, that's a good
It's
meme.
just it's not happening.
You can keep that meme. Just ditch the other
Goddamn.
ones.
Can you stop greeting the audience in French?
Okay, so you're probably wondering, what is Dimension W? So to answer that, we actually need to talk about parallel universes.
Oh my god.
Is that the only reason you wanted to recommend this?
No, but it actually works in quite well, especially after the last episode, which actually does have parallel universes.
It sure does.
But I digress. The first thing you actually need to know about this anime is that it's a science fiction story that's kind of built upon the foundation of some really awful pseudoscience bullshit. And it's something you just kind of have to understand and accept for the show to work. Because it is fucking bullshit. So to kind of explain how it all works. So in this universe, so humanity has discovered the existence of, I guess, what they call the fourth dimension, which is the titular Dimension W. And the anime, which kind of illustrates this multiple times, shows Dimension W as being on like a traditional graph with your X, Y, and Z coordinates, but it's just the negative x-axis. It makes zero fucking sense, but like I said, you just kind of have to accept it. They could have called this anything else other than Dimension W, and it would have worked just as well. But I guess
they could have called it Cyber Sleuth.
They could have called it the digital world.
They could have called it nuclear energy, and it would have just been the same thing.
Well, yeah. Basically, the thing you have to just understand is that like it's another dimension that has infinite energy, and humanity has tapped into it to solve the world's energy crisis. That's the basic way it works. And so humanity has kind of built these giant towers all around the world that harness the energy of Dimension W, and it filters it out into these devices called coils, which at this point in the future, which is like the 2070s or something, it powers pretty much everything on Earth. But because these coils are essentially monopolized by this one company, they're also illegal coils. So that's where we bring in the protagonist of the show, Kyouma.
Protagonist.
Kyouma is this anachronistic, robe-wearing, coil-hating motherfucker, and he works as a collector, and it's basically his job to track down the illegal coils.
And boy, can he dance.
And boy, yes. We'll talk about the opening of the show later.
So stupid.
But along the way, he gets paired up with Mira, who is a sexy robot girl who's powered by coils. So
secondly, the
Sexy.
show has gone
Quote,
up like 0.5 on the scale.
So you can sort of see where this character dynamic is going. There's a real odd couple situation between the two that I really enjoy. But there are a lot of elements beyond that in the show that I also like, that kind of strike a chord with me personally, which is why I'm recommending it. I think this show has like a really cool setting. Anyone that knows me knows I love sci-fi, so that kind of rooted me into this show immediately. I love all like the character designs in this anime. I remember the first time I saw the opening. I don't know if you remember, but at the beginning of the opening, they like flash all the characters in very quick succession. And the first time I saw that, I was like, yeah, this is my kind of show. They all have like very diverse and visually striking designs, which I really like.
They passed the graining test.
And I also really like how this show uses the concept of Dimension W for more than just being like a straight science fiction show. There's kind of like a prevailing mystery in the show of what is Dimension W, and why are the bad guys trying so hard to cover up the truth about it. And you kind of get a glimpse into its power in like the latest arc. Mm-hmm. But I liked how the show used that to kind of set up this 2-episode mystery / horror story that kind of showed the anime wasn't just comfortable sticking within the boundaries of just being like an action sci-fi show. It kind of opened up a lot of storytelling possibilities that I really hope they explore in the future.
For this 12-episode anime.
Yes. But I mean, like, you know, I do wish it was more. But I mean, there's still plenty of time for them to do what they want, I hope.
Yeah.
And like I said, just kind of talking casually about it, we'll break it down more at the end season podcast. But did you want to say something before I go on, Collin?
Oh no, I was just the other stuff that I was enjoying this anime quite a bit. And then the latest 2 episodes, it started to feel. People were commenting that this was rushed in comparison to its source material. And I wasn't feeling that until the latest 2 episodes, where I feel like there needed to be a little bit more explanation as to what was going on. I kind of needed to go back and go, wait, how does this fall together again? To the point where now I'm actually I kind of want to pick up the manga now.
I mean, I've seen that phrase, like that kind of discussion leveled a lot at this show about how it's skipping a lot of its source material, and I don't really feel like anything was missing. I know this last arc, it had a lot in it, and it was kind of a very complex story that a lot of people didn't seem to understand at first. I think it wasn't straightforward, but I think everything's there to figure out.
No, everything was there. I just needed to back up a little.
But I don't feel like anything's really missing. Like, if they're cutting out stuff, I imagine, like, I haven't read the source material either, and I do want to read it, but it seems like it's probably the stuff that's cut feels like it's probably pacing stuff, character stuff that they probably could do without. And I think there's still a lot of character stuff in the show still. So
yeah.
When it comes to like a murder mystery setting, like, well, it's not necessarily because you were saying that it really takes a shift in the latest Haunted House arc from more of an action sci-fi to a mystery, and something like a mystery, you really need ample time to kind of make sure you have all of your bases covered and all of your information is being laid out properly. And I don't think that it does it in a way where everything is conveyed properly, because yeah, everything is there, but it doesn't exactly feel like it's doing it in a fluid manner where I can really get into it. Because if you're comparing to something like maybe Perfect Insider, where that's
Oh,
like
God.
straight up mystery, but the pacing is such that it's a regular mystery where they're pacing everything right. You make sure you know all the characters and all the information, and they focus on specific things that you're supposed to keep in mind. Obviously, with Dimension W, you're not going to have time for something like this. But
Well, I think maybe you misunderstood my point. Is that I don't think it took a shift towards that. I like that it did something different.
well, it did do something different, but it doesn't.
I'm not saying it did it as good as like something that maybe only focuses on being a mystery anime. I'm just saying I like the fact that it has some variety.
No, yeah, I get what you're saying. That you like that it's trying new things and playing around with the setting to introduce new genres into it. I like that, and there's nothing wrong with that necessarily. But I mean, you can be a jack of all trades and be a master of none, and that's what I feel like Dimension W is right now.
I wouldn't agree, because I feel like that arc did also other stuff that I want to go into, more than just being like a murder mystery. Because I do agree with you. I'm not saying that was it could actually have been done better.
If they fleshed it out a little bit more, I feel like it could have been really intriguing.
But I also think like if they add okay, so if they did that in like 3 episodes instead of 2, it probably would have flowed easier. But also, I would not want them to spend like a quarter of the show just on this side arc.
Right, but like
you have to budget in a 12-episode series. You have to budget your time appropriately.
Yeah, but here's the thing: you have those 2 episodes Haunted House, but the episode before that was just fucking Mira and the kids. Like, it was a character episode, so that could have been devoted to. I get that they even blitzed through that because there was supposed to be a lot more going on with the kids in the source material, which they kind of glossed over for the sake of pacing. But as someone who isn't necessarily all that invested in Mira, as opposed to a lot of the more subtle nuances that are happening with the plot. Like, I want to know what Kyoma's deal is. I want to know what Loser's deal is. I want to know what the deal with the number coils are. And I want to know all of this stuff. And here I am just wasting time watching Mira save these kids. Like, it is a character episode, but...
You need those, though. And you especially needed those after the first 2 episodes.
Right, but in a 12-episode series, you're very limited with what you can do.
But I think it's using that effectively. And that's kind of like, I do want to talk very much about Kyoma and Mira. And I'll kind of relate this last arc into that, because I do think there was a lot of good character building.
I do really enjoy their dynamic. I like the idea of you have a guy who's a coil bounty hunter who hates coils with a burning passion, and then you obviously have Mira who, is a robot, so she's, coils the character, I guess.
Yeah.
So
you also just have the general dynamic of him just being a jaded old guy, and
that's I definitely want to talk about that, because he's very much not like your typical main male protagonist that you see in a lot of animes these days.
He's like
he reminds me of Jotaro, which is he's voiced by he's voiced by Daisuke Ono.
Yeah,
and he does the Jotaro voice. So I mean,
he's very much a throwback to like an older time, like both figuratively and literally in the show, and that's very refreshing.
And this feels like a show that would have been way more popular like 7 to 8 years ago.
Very likely. But the thing is, like, as much as I like Kyoma, and I'm very, like, Frank's right, they've brought up a lot of questions that they have not answered yet, and I'm very interested in finding out those answers to him and his past, and why he hates coils.
Loser 2.
Yes, Loser 2 is seems like he could be a very cool character, and the new one they just introduced as well.
I cannot wait for them to reveal that Kyoma's backstory and why he hates coils is literally just Will Smith's backstory from iRobot.
It always comes back to iRobot.
No coil, save the girl. So,
I do want to talk about one more thing.
Oh.
I really need to talk about Mira, because I feel like a lot of people here don't like Mira.
I don't.
I
like Robot Girls, but I don't like Mira.
It really actually surprised me how much I liked her character. I mean, obviously she's like cute, a robot girl, and that works very well in this sort of setting. But I think in a lot of shows like this, she would have just been that. She would have just been the cute robot girl sidekick who was along for the ride. And it seems like they're trying to do a bit more with her. And the one dynamic I really like about her character is that she's neither like this full human robot or a stereotypical robot. she's kind of cut very much down the middle. And I like the way sometimes the show will like pull back and remind you that she's a robot, while also kind of treating her like a human. And I'll give you a good example of this in, I think it was like in the latest episode. So you have Kyouma. He largely views Mira as like a thing, right? He doesn't see her as human. He kind of just sees her as a piece of junk, in his own words. But in that latest episode, there's this really good scene where Kyouma gets mad and like he punches Mira and he kind of hurts his hand. And it's just a really subtle character moment, but I love that, like, in that split second, you see that he doesn't see her as, like, a robot made of metal, because otherwise he would never have punched her. He kind of sees her as an actual person. And, like...
A person he can hit.
Yeah. Yes!
It just, like, kind of goes, like, both ways in a way that's, that it really does speak to his character, but in a not very, in a kind of condemning way.
Not in a very flattering way, yes.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's kind of planting the seeds a bit to where their relationship is going, and I like that. But perhaps the thing that struck me most about Mira was that in the latest episode when she gets caught in the parallel universe created by Dimension W, and she gets attacked by the ghost people, which I realize is very difficult to explain out of context, but
Christ.
Even in context, I was kind of confused by that.
Basically, all you need to know is, like, in this scene, she was in danger, and in that moment, she's like, contemplating, like, the meaning of her existence, and the meaning of self as it pertains to, like, being a robot. She kind of understands that, like, you know, even if she becomes in harm, if something bad happens to her, she could just be restarted. But you also see her kind of ruminating that, like, you know, even if she comes back as the same person with the same personality, you know, would that really still be her?
You do realize that Ghost in the Shell did this in like 2004,
I
right?
understand this is not a new concept. It's very much like a play on a very old philosophical question. But I do like to see it when it's applied to non-humans. And it does show that they're at least trying to do a bit more with this character. At least I hope. That could have just been like a one-off thing they threw in that episode as like a quirk. But it's kind of something I really hope they build on, because she has a lot more layers potentially to her than I thought. I thought she was just going to be cute robot girl, and it seems like they're trying to set her apart from that.
But it's really annoying because I can't see her as anything other than cute robot girl, even though the narrative is clearly trying to like force her on me as like, oh look, you know, she can be really intriguing, she can do all this shit, and it's like, yeah, but you're still cute robot girl. Like,
why? I don't understand why you can't be both, Frank.
I guess you could, but I mean, there's so much potential that happens in other parts of Dimension W that just feels really untapped, even though now we're 5 episodes in, soon to be 6. And I'm just so much more invested in those aspects of it that when it tries to force, like, oh, look at Mira, guys, like, I want to know about other stuff.
But she's like a main character of the show, Frank.
The thing is that Mira is looking to be principal to what's going to happen in the show.
Right.
Yeah. She's related. She's like, she was created by like apparently one of the most important people on the planet.
Right.
I do want to note real quick that the blonde sort of rival character, I like
Raiden?
that he is that his name?
No.
Or is that just what you're calling him?
He looks like Raiden.
Okay. I like that he is not just an asshole rival character. That he sort of has a more normal working relationship with Kyouma.
Yeah.
He helps him out.
They could have just let him be an asshole. You know.
Well, in this case, Kyoma's kind of the asshole.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, is it me, or was episode 5 going particularly hard on the fan service?
There's just that one scene of her in the shower.
Yeah,
But
there was a lot, though.
She was naked, though. She was naked.
But I like that, because, again, that's my point. Like, the show treats her as human, but I like when they pull back and show she's still a weird robot person. It's not like other shows where it's like this character is just human and a robot, but they don't really use the fact that she's a robot well.
Most people have vag lips in their chests, so yeah.
Yes.
How about that chest vagina?
Yeah.
Jesus. Can I interject here?
Yeah, please go ahead.
No.
So I don't want to go too heavy into an end of season style conversation, but I did want to voice some of the umbrages that I take with
There
this
you go.
Is that okay, Steve?
Yes, go ahead.
So, ultimately, and I'll explain why in a second, I find Dimension W to be rather boring. And the reason for that is it came in this latest arc when I realized that this show was not going to deliver on its interesting premise and just become a Monster of the Week style show. The whole numbers thing, I initially thought was there'd be a very finite amount of numbers, they'd be tracked down, something would come of it, and that would be the arc. But then this latest episode happens, you see the numbers, it's like number 100 something, and it's like, oh my god, there's so many of these things, it's just going to be an excuse for them to wind up in a bunch of situations. Again, Monster of the Week. And I was very disappointed by that, because I don't think that the characters are interesting enough on their own to carry me through all that. And without any kind of sense of progression with the plot, I just find myself bored.
I can see where you're coming from. I do think it's a bit early to label it as that, because we've essentially had 2 numbers so far. And I know, like, there's obviously hundreds of them out there.
And I don't feel like we've comfortably fallen into a status quo yet.
And that's true, and I didn't drop the show. I'm still watching it. But that is a very real concern that I have right now. And again, during this latest arc, I just found myself bored.
Tune in 6 weeks from now to see if Funk is still fucking bored.
And I would also say, Funk, even if it does go that route, as long as they're using Dimension W for varied and interesting things every week or every other week, I think that would be strong enough for me. I think there's a lot of possibilities of what they could do with that power. So as long as they don't drop the ball with that, I think there's enough supporting story here to go along with the characters. That I mean, to characters, to me, I know you're not feeling them, but to me, they're the strong part of the show.
I mean, it certainly has potential. Like, I think that there's a lot that they can do. There's a lot of relationships that they can really get into that I would be really interested to see them kind of work on. If they backed away from Mira maybe a little bit. Not that there's anything wrong with Mira, but I feel like she's just taking up so much of the show. And
Frank, it sounds like you're robophobic.
no, I'm not robophobic.
We're an inclusive podcast, Frank.
No, it's not. Look, I have nothing against Mira because she's very cute. I don't mind the chest vagina. I can even get over the fact that they like made her have bigger cleavage for whatever reason. Like, you know, I can get over that. But like, there's so much more that I want to know that when it's like, oh, we're gonna focus some more on Mira instead of getting to all this shit, like, it just bothers me.
I mean, it sounds like you want to get to the fireworks factory now, and I like that they're laying in so many questions that they can't answer. And you're right, if we get to the end of the series and they don't answer half of them at least, I would be disappointed too. But I don't think it's a negative of the show to say after 5 episodes it's asked a lot of interesting questions that it has not answered.
Well, I mean, I think it needs to I would be more invested if they laid on a couple more interesting questions instead.
But I mean, they just answered a big one because we found out a huge part of what.
Yeah, no, of course.
Yes, go ahead, Funk.
Well, speaking on the whole mirror thing, so earlier somebody brought up the episode of her with the kids as being like a character episode, which it obviously was, but I feel like that they devoted an episode to telling the audience what they already knew. Like, did they really need to characterize her through that whole episode as somebody who's compassionate enough to help children?
I think that the only thing that I can see me getting from that episode in terms of, like, maybe plot-wise is that the kid is related to,
right.
Whoever the hell that was. What was like the minister or whatever? Like,
and that makes sense. I just question the need to write an episode that proves
it could have been half an episode
because the audience already likes Mira. They if anybody watching that show would be like, yeah, she's a nice robot. She would help people. That's what she does. That's her personality. And then the episode just goes on, and the whole thing just tells you that again.
Yeah, it's the whole episode.
That's not the whole. The whole episode is largely about her and Kyoma getting to know one another.
Yeah,
is it? They barely interact during that episode.
What?
they don't really interact during that episode.
Yes, they do. There's a scene with her in the bathroom.
With her in the house where like
there's a scene with her in the bathroom. There's a scene where he gives her her own room, and like it shows that he's kind of growing on her. I guess like she's kind of growing on him.
That's not the majority of the episode, though. The majority of the episode is her and the kids.
Okay,
he's not around for most of it.
That also lays an important plot point.
Whatever.
I will say I think a lot of the reasons why I think that is just because of how much of the manga they really are skipping. Because that part of the manga apparently was a lot longer than
I heard there's a lot more to it.
It just wasn't that integral to the overall plot, so they probably just decided to skip it all. And also, like, there's a lot they're skipping. Like, the whole thing with her suddenly having bigger breasts is actually something that's covered in the manga, where they suggest to her to hide her little coil thing.
Her chest vagina.
She should essentially get bigger breasts so that they'll hide it. Which really is something that I think that they probably could have included.
They could have made that even a throwaway line.
Yeah, like they could have just said like they could have put something in there. I don't know.
I don't know. I think we need to move on because we've been talking about it for a while. Because I could go off on this whole manga shit for a while. it does like get under my skin the way people treat the source material as gospel and get mad if you exclude any little thing.
Yeah, but like that's just something that's noticeable. No explanation.
It's not necessarily that like, oh, it has to follow the manga or else it's terrible. I'm
not saying you're saying that. I'm saying a lot of people are saying
that. If they had included maybe like a throwaway line, right? Like you just said, "Oh, Mira, like your breasts are bigger," and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's because they said that I should get a boob job so that I can hide my chest vagina." Like that would have been fine. Like
unless it becomes relevant to the story, I just don't see the big deal.
Then why even make her boobs bigger to begin with?
I don't know. It seems like a silly plot point even in the original source material. Anyways, we're gonna move on because I don't want to take up too much time with this. I'll just say I very much advocate for this show. If you want a very cool sci-fi show, this is it. So, Collin, you want to go next?
You've pinned me. Oh Jesus!
Get pinned.
Collin, do you want to go next? Well, what do I say to that? No.
Okay, Collin, go next.
Okay. So, my recommendation is something only Funk and I have watched, and it is titled Shouwa Genroku Rakugo Shinjuu, hereby referred to as Rakugo. And it is about, it starts out about an ex-convict who's just gotten out of prison and tracks down this famous comic storyteller who is famous for doing Rakugo. And if you don't know what the fuck Rakugo is, congratulations, you're in my club.
Do you want to explain it?
It is a form of comic storytelling where you only have one actor sitting in place, playing a myriad of characters and only having two props, a towel and a fan. And this is what our ex-convict wants to study under this Rakugo master that he saw perform at the prison for the prisoners. And this Rakugo master, whose name is Yakumo, but I'll probably be calling him Bone while talking about this.
Not Kiku-san?
No, listen, he's got a lot of names, okay? He is our actual main character, or at least has been for the past 5 episodes or so. It flashes back to his life from childhood, becoming a master of his craft. After the first episode, which is double length, it's 40-something minutes long, is mostly about the prisoner who is given the nickname Yotaro, I think.
You are correct, and it's worth noting in that episode about 15 to 20 minutes, maybe a little less, is devoted strictly to straight Rakugo and nothing else.
Yes, and I'm gonna get to that stuff. Don't worry, Mr. Flurry. So we flash back to Bone, and it's about his personal journey through his life. But the show, even if you don't know anything about Rakugo, and maybe you're not even like interested in Rakugo, you can still relate to Bone, because he starts out not being interested in Rakugo either. He's a dancer, and he's had that taken away from him because he's had a leg injury, and now he's forced to apprentice in probably, what is this, 1930s, maybe even 20s at this point in the timeline.
Probably 30s.
Okay, yeah, probably 1930s. And he's forced to apprentice to another Rakugo master. And it's a show that's about feeling inadequate. It's a show about envy, or feeling like you don't have a place in the world, and finding something you take pride in, and learning about it, learning to love it. It's about your friendships, about love lost, about
Love Live.
There it is.
About breaking down, about building yourself back up again, and about what you leave behind when you're through with your life. And Rakugo is a show about life.
This sounds deep.
It's a great fucking show.
And by the way, I don't mean deep as like a joke. I mean, actually sounds pretty deep.
Yeah, no, it's great. It doesn't.
Very good.
Yeah, and it's not pretentious about it. It's just a show about going through this guy's life. And it's just a really lovely story. And fuck it, I wish I had my notes.
Can I butt in?
Oh, sure. I was about to go talk about the Rakugo, but if you'd like to go ahead, go ahead.
Well,
Go ahead.
put a tack on that, and because that is worth talking about.
Okay.
I'll be quick. There's two things I want to say about this. I remember when it first aired, I was very apprehensive to watch it, mostly because a 40-minute episode is very hard to dedicate your time to watch when you have like 20 other things airing you need to keep up with. But I was afraid that the show, given its subject matter, was going to be very dry, very, very kind of dry period piece tone. For lack, to sound kind of boorish, that it would be boring. But the show actually has a lot of like levity to it. There's the interactions between two of the principal characters in the flashbacks are very endearing. It's got a lot of light humor. It's a very easy watch, much more than I anticipated. So if you're an idiot like me, and that's kind of holding you back, you have that perception of it. It's not at all what it's like. And the other thing I wanted to comment on, in typical funk fashion, this anime has a great, fantastic score, amongst both the opening and ending themes and the incidental music throughout the show. It's very contemporary. At least I don't know if jazz was very popular in Japan, but in America at the time, contemporary to that, it's just great, lively, well-written, and more importantly for jazz, well-played songs that set the period tone very well, and cannot get enough of it. Cannot. So, back to actual Rakugo.
So, this show, actually, you can tell there was a lot of love for this dying art, in going into this show, because this show features extensive, uninterrupted Rakugo scenes. And while the later episodes have a little bit more on the side going on, and the Rakugo scenes are very well directed. They keep you engaged if you start to maybe tune out. I may have mentioned that the Rakugo was failing to hold my attention at first,
You did mention that. I
yes.
judged you.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I'm sorry. Turns out I'm just a fag. Because I went back and I watched those scenes, and they were genuinely great. If you're, I wouldn't say that I'd go out and I want to go watch a bunch of Rakugo now. Not this show. I mean actual Rakugo. But for this show, for what it is, the Rakugo keeps you engaged, and not only that is that when you get into the later ones, or I guess the middle ones, since we're only halfway through, they become the Rakugo becomes much more relevant to how the character is feeling at the time and their performance and how it affects them, and it becomes more engaging as you go.
There's actually. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry. I was just gonna wrap that up with one last line.
I wanted to add to that actually.
Okay, all right.
Before you wrapped it up, one of my favorite things throughout the show is when they have, when they show the characters as they're new to it, they have intentionally bad Rakugo performances, and it's very well done in that it hurts to watch.
They're bad in different ways too.
Mm-hmm. It's great job by, I don't know if it's the direction or the actors, or maybe even the writing, but they really just, it's perfectly communicated just how these characters are struggling, like why they're struggling, and again, it's just like being in a theater when somebody's bombing. It's so hard to sit through. But it was very well done, and it obviously just makes it all the better when that character grows. It's effective in that way as well.
You by the time Bon, Kiku, Yakumo finds his footing in Rakugo and sort of finds his own voice. It's he does this play, and then later on in the next episode he does his own bit. That's just him, and you realize that he's nailed it. And you're I was glued to the screen. I was paying full attention, and I was just I was elated that this character had found his voice. And it's like you don't need to be familiar with doing like theater or anything like that to really appreciate the show. It's a great show.
Collin, I just want to say I can listen to you to say Japanese words and names all day.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anything else you guys wanted to add on that?
It looks very nice.
Like art style, or just how well it's animated?
Art style, and okay. It's not a show that really demands a lot of animation, but they do definitely get across characters well through their shifting body language and facial expressions and stuff like that. But yeah, not like a wow. I mean, it's Studio Dean, which is apparently a studio.
Oh God.
Yeah, it's apparently a studio with a pretty bad reputation in terms of its animation, but this show looks.
Do they have one?
This show looks very nice.
All right. Well, yeah. Good job, Frank.
Good job.
All right, so I'm kind of glad I'm going last because my anime is probably one that if you're watching anime this season, you've probably seen it or you've at least heard of it. So, but if you haven't, consider this, my glowing recommendation. This is Boku dake ga Inai Machi.
Machi.
I fucked up. No.
A town in which I do not exist.
Yeah.
No. What's its slave name?
Erased is the slave name, as we call it. It's by A1 Pictures, who have a pretty impressive resume under their belt, and it's directed by Tomohiko Ito, who did Sword Art Online. But don't let the fact that he's used to adapting really shitty light novels get to you, because this show is where he really starts to prove his worth as a director and just create a visually stunning and artistically, really creative show. It's kind of hard to get into everything that makes it so great, and it's very hard to summarize it and give it like an elevator pitch. the best way I can kind of describe it is it revolves around a man named Satoru, and he's a struggling mangaka and part-time pizza guy, down on his luck. But he has a special ability where if he senses that there's a life-threatening incident about to happen, he has the ability to go back in time about 4 minutes or so and take the necessary steps to correct it. Think like Ghost Trick, if anyone's ever played that.
Well, I can think of a very easy elevator pitch. It's early edition meets 24.
I'm not familiar with early edition, so
I've watched early edition, by the way. I get it. Early edition is about this guy. He gets like tomorrow's newspaper today.
He gets the early edition.
Yes.
Oh,
so he goes out and prevents bad things from happening that are written in tomorrow's paper.
Okay, that's cool.
Oh, that's neat.
That's a really cool premise, actually. I'm not familiar with that. Anyway, so I'm gonna try not to spoil it for the people that haven't seen it, but he's framed for a very serious crime, and in light of this, his ability takes him back further than he's ever gone before, which gives him the opportunity to prevent an incident that will in turn hopefully prevent him from being framed for this crime. So artistically excuse me, I don't know why I'm choking all of a sudden, but the show is visually spectacular. Brief spoiler, but he winds up going back to his childhood as an elementary school student.
It's not really a spoiler since it's mentioned in the synopsis.
Yeah, but like,
I think it's worth like avoiding spoiling a lot of this show.
Yeah, I really don't. I really want to give away as little as I possibly can.
Okay, yeah.
It's such a. In terms of the story, it's told so well, and it's utterly thrilling. It's a really good mystery, but it's presented in such a way where it really grips you. It has very stunning portrayals of childhood.
Very accurate portrayals of childhood.
Yeah, lots of childhood innocence happening.
Kids are fucking assholes.
In the second episode alone, you can see like there's a lot of love that was put into the classroom scenes and the scenes where he's playing with the children in the schoolyard and getting to know one of his classmates, Hinazuki, who is a very pivotal character for the show. But it doesn't just focus on the past, as cool as that would be. It revolves around the balance of the past and the present, which kind of collide in a typical, story that deals with time travel manner. But the way it's presented is very unique in that, in the scenes that take place in the past, it's presented in, I don't know what is it, like a letterbox format, I guess you would call it?
Widescreen,
yeah,
basically.
it's almost made like a movie, and it gives you such intense feelings of nostalgia, and you're able to clearly see that like this is happening in the past, and it's done very, very well. And I know everyone here has seen it, so you guys.
I think we would all give it a glowing recommendation as well.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
I wish I can
really
get
good.
a little more into it without spoiling a lot, but lots of melodrama portrayed in a very realistic way. Characters are all incredibly well written. Plot's great. I can't recommend it enough.
So I'm not sure you guys are going to be able to answer this. I don't think you are. But I have just a brief question.
Sure.
Okay.
Is this a meme?
I'm assuming, this is just translation, but is that's gutsy 80s talk in Japan?
80s. Like outdated slang?
Yes.
It feels like it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I have no idea. I would take an educated guess, say yeah, but I have no idea.
I do like how the first time he goes into his old class, the kids are just talking about Dragon Warrior or
Dragon Quest and Final
and
Fantasy.
it's like that just sets the time period in Japan so well, because that's all kids would talk about at the time.
Steve would know as a 40-year-old Japanese man.
Yes.
No, but
God,
there are scenes in that show that are portrayed so, like, they're really beautiful in hindsight. Like, the scene where he takes Hinazuki to go see a quote-unquote Christmas tree, even though it's February. And, he takes her all the way to the top of the hill, and they're standing on this gorgeous tree, and it's animated so well. Like, that's... A1 Pictures is, like, really good. They do a lot of really visually spectacular shows. I know they did Your Lie in April, which is another really... a meme show, I know, I'm sorry. But it's animated very well, you can at least admit that.
This show's hard to talk about without spoiling
it.
it.
Is.
There's so many good moments.
I very much like how it's not been explicitly stated that he's not as competent as he could be when he's 10, because even though he has the knowledge of a 29-year-old, he has the brain of a 10-year-old.
I like how sometimes he catches himself saying things that his 29-year-old self is thinking. And, like, there's a little bit of an overlay happening there between, like, the 29... Because, obviously... his 10-year-old self has a different voice actor than his 29-year-old self, but there are times when the 10-year-old self will talk and it's overlapping with what the 29-year-old self is thinking, and it'll be like, shit, did I say that out loud? Like, it's...
And wouldn't you know it, it's almost always embarrassing. But what I really like about the show is that it's extremely plot-driven while not sacrificing having tender character moments. Like, the show has a real emotional heart to it, which is obviously very endearing, but it doesn't come at the expense of slowing down the plot at all.
Yeah, man. Chocolate-related drama fucks me up.
Yeah, I really like the adult segments, but I'm always a little disappointed when we're not in childhood mode, because it just works so well.
Yeah.
There's such a dissonance there that, like, you have, like, the childhood problems in addition to the adult problems, where they blend in such a way that makes a really compelling narrative.
You know what? I have kind of an interesting theory I've been thinking about a lot regarding that.
Is this spoilers?
I'm gonna try to avoid spoiling it, but obviously there's scenes in the past and there's scenes in the present. And I feel like those two segments of the show are directed very differently. I don't want to say the scenes in the present are, like, under-directed, but they're kind of, like, presented in a way that makes them feel very different from the past. And I don't just mean, like, because the past stuff is shown in, like, widescreen. That's just, like, an obvious difference. But it seems like the show wants you to be in the moment of the past more. It wants you to kind of long to go back there.
Yeah, it's all presented in a very nostalgic way.
Yeah, and I feel like that's very much like a thematic point. Like, the director wants you to feel that. The same way that, like, oftentimes as an adult, you kind of pine for your childhood and want to go back and relive those days, where this is very much an anime about literally doing that. And they also capture just those kind of... I love that it does take that time out, even though he has this important mission he's doing in the past. It takes those times out of the story to capture what it means to be a kid.
At the same time, though, it could be a little chilling because sometimes when the shots are presented in widescreen, they can feel a little bit claustrophobic too.
Oh, that's entirely intentional, and it's kind of shot. This is also what I mean by the way it's directed. The scenes are kind of composed in a way that, like, take the viewpoint of a child. Sometimes you'll see scenes where, like, an adult will walk into the picture, but, like, the top of the screen cuts his head off.
Right, because it's
the way, like, the kid would see him, because he wouldn't see him that tall. There's a really good video out there. There's a YouTuber named Mother's Basement. I don't know if you ever heard of him, but he has this video where he just breaks down the scene at the end of episode 2 where he's in the park. And it just highlights how wonderfully directed this show is.
It's very sharp.
Yes, it's so well done.
The soundtrack too is it's not...
It's understated, but, like, when it needs to underscore a moment, it builds up.
Most of the time, like, you don't even notice it.
Exactly, yeah, but, like, when it's necessary, it's there, and then you notice it. It's not distracting at all. It just complements the mood of each scene. Did no one else have anything else to say?
Well, I mean,
you guys all swing.
I agree with you, Steve. I wanted to add on to your points about kind of like nostalgia for the past outweighing how satisfied somebody is with the present. So a big theme of the show is obviously changing stuff in the past to affect the future. That's what his whole power really is. So I think that, and this isn't really like a radical opinion or anything, it's just adding on to what you were saying, but it's kind of like when we're showing the present, it's like the quote bad end to relate it to like a video game. Which obviously I do because I'm a man child. So I didn't think about this until you brought this up, and I'm like, well, yeah, that makes sense. So if they're kind of showing the audience the present in a way that's less than endearing, maybe at the end of the show, assuming our protagonist is successful, cut back to the present. It's directed differently. It's a good end, and maybe it looks more like the past or what have you. Maybe that's something that they'll do. I don't know. That's just adding on to your theory.
Yeah, that's what I hope, and I also think the first episode does a terrific job kind of offsetting that, where it shows you like kind of how shitty his life is. Like he's in a dead end job, and he has his dream to be a manga artist, but he's going nowhere. And it's just kind of interesting that he gets the chance to relive the childhood, obviously with something more going on. But there's a scene where like when he walks into his home for the first time and he looks into his room and his eyes just light up at seeing like that mask and all his childhood stuff there.
There is. I was debating whether or not I should save this for the end of the season podcast or not, because obviously it's a plot related point I wanted to make, and there's this fantastic scene where it's he's a child and he's about to have a race with some other kid who's supposed to be the fastest kid in the class, and he almost wins and he stops himself from winning. And it's such a great scene because it informs on the direction of the plot, where it's telling the audience that he is bound to make the same mistakes that he did previously. As in, he's probably going to fuck up, and he's not going to be able to get this on his first try. And then it informs on him as a character because he is a loser in the future because he never thought he was worth being a winner. And I thought that was such a strong, telling character moment for him.
Wow. I never even interpreted it that way, but that's wow.
Because he threw it because he just thought that kid deserved to win more than him.
Right.
Yeah. That's really good. I didn't even really think of that, but you're totally right. There's one more really good scene I want to touch on, and I really have to walk around spoilers on this one, so I will. But it's just the show really uses the time jumping mechanic in a way that serves the story well. Like he obviously has to figure out what's going on in the past and the present to solve this problem. But they also kind of use that for really good character moments. So right after he goes back to the past for the first time and he runs home, there's a scene shortly after where he's having dinner with his mom. And in the present, he has, after you've known your mom for 30 years, you're used to her. There's a scene in his apartment where she comes over and he's kind of annoyed that she's there. But then you get to the past and he kind of realizes how important she is. So when she makes him dinner, he thanks her for dinner and compliments her on how good it is. And she's kind of taken back by that. And it just kind of reminded me of my childhood and the number of times I probably thanked my own mom for doing that for me. I could count that on one hand.
Oh,
so
what an ungrateful cunt.
Yeah, it actually that scene made me feel really bad. But it's just such a good character moment because a lot of kids do that. They don't appreciate how much their mother cares for them and how much their mother does for them. Until it's too late. So it was just such a great character moment that was really only possible because of this, wacky time travel story.
I'm trying to think of weaknesses that the show has. If I have anything bad that I can say about it, I think
Well, yeah. There's stuff you can say about it,
I don't.
but I
like...
want to save it for
Oh.
the podcast.
Wow.
we're on the podcast.
Oh my god!
Wow. I one thing I don't like, and this is an extremely minor thing, so I don't even know why I'm bringing it up, but with the art style, I don't like how rounded everybody's head looks. Because they look really round.
My one problem, I think, is that sometimes it can be a little too over the top. Because, like, for the most part, when it tries to sell something, it does it really, really well on its own merits. But there are some scenes where it tries to sell it a little bit too hard for me. In episode 5, I was noticing a couple scenes like that, and it kind of took me out of it a little bit. I mean, it's a very minor gripe, but
I
trying.
Honestly can't.
Can I?
I can't think of a serious actual flaw I can come up with the show yet. This could very well be like the first show I've given a 10 in like 4 years. So I really hope it doesn't drop the ball, and I don't expect it to.
Oh jeez.
But this is it's already on Mal, like one of the top 10 shows of all time, and I think that's a bit presumptuous because it's only halfway done. But
if there's any show that if it keeps up this stride, that it can definitely do just that.
Yes, this will probably go down to like one of the best anime that I've ever seen. So I can't give this show enough gratitude.
It's fantastic
and platitudes.
I don't want
how good it is.
I don't want to spoil anything again, but I will say the last two for some reason the last 2 episodes I wasn't super into. Maybe it was just because I was in a weird mood or something. I don't know, but for whatever reason they just didn't. Maybe it's just because they were in the present and not the past, because I was enjoying the past so much. When they jumped to the present,
that's what kind of got me thinking about that whole thing.
When I jumped to the present, I was just kind of like, well, this suddenly isn't nearly as interesting as everything that was happening before, and I'm not really sure if I like this anymore.
I'm trying to think, like, in episode 5, there was this one scene, right, where he sees Hinazuki's mom throwing out the trash, and he finds, like, the pair of mittens in the trash. And he starts, like, freaking out about it. Like, I thought that was one of the instances where I was thinking, like, it was going a little too over the top for me, because, like, I don't know, like, everything about that just seemed way too, like, it was trying to, like, really oversell that.
And
it stood alone on its own. It would have stood alone on its own merits without him, like, you know, it goes into the typical, like, end of Evangelion style, like, zoom in on the eye, and then he's screaming and running away, like, you know.
I thought it was really weird how they...
Hold on a second here, because isn't that when they transition back to the present?
Yes.
Then that makes total sense.
Oh yeah. Oh, yes. That is when it does that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
I thought the stylistic decision to have a slow zoom in on his eyes while flashing a red screen and playing the music from Kill Bill, I thought that was very weird, and I don't think it entirely works for me. But I can see why they might have that influence.
I do want to say that the end scene of the latest episode was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
That was done very well.
That was good.
Yes.
That was great.
What
we could probably talk about Erased all night, but do you have any final thoughts, Frank?
No, I'm just saying, like, I'm sorry that I tried to get into it a lot without going into a lot of spoilers, because that's
okay. We're only halfway through.
It's a fantastic show.
Yeah. Can I just say that it's, even if you have parts of this show spoiled for you, it is still very much worth watching.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's more than just the sum of its parts.
But it's definitely worth going into blind if you can.
Yes. Which you haven't if you're listening to this.
All right, so that's going to wrap up the anime recommendation section. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back with the shows that we dropped this season.
Ayo.
Dun, dun, dun.
All right, welcome back to the Luckycast. So now that we've got the good stuff out of the way, let's dive into the garbage. So I think we're going to call this segment the Drop List, and we're going to use it to talk about some of the shitty anime that we've dropped since the beginning of the season.
Yay.
I figure we can all go one by one and like each bring up a show until we've exhausted them all. But there's definitely one I'd like to take the lead with here, because of all the shows that I dropped this season. This is definitely the one that I was most disappointed in actually having to do so, because I thought it had legitimate potential. And that show is Bubuki Buranki,
AKA
Bubukis. Now, if you haven't watched Bubukis, it's a show about these group of 5 kids who each possess living weapons called Bubukis. and these kids, they combine their weapons together to form a giant robot called a Buranki, hence the title. And each Bubuki corresponds to a certain piece of the robot. So like the main character has the heart, of course. 2 characters have the arms, and the other 2 characters have the legs. And there's also the bad guys who also have their own Bubukis and can also form their own bad guy robot. And throughout the show, at least from the first 5 episodes I watched, I think I dropped after episode 5. The kids are on the run from these bad guys, and they're trying to escape and make it to this floating island in the sky, where the main character's mom is, and it's basically her job to protect the world from these giant autonomous robots that live there.
Yeah, the Budonkis come from the island?
Yes,
right?
which they call Treasure Island for some reason. But it's ostensibly Angel Island. Okay, so my biggest issue with the show is that it kind of seemed like it was originally going for something a bit more serious. Like, a lot of elements in the show are themselves a bit outlandish, but it felt like the story was at least trying to tackle them in, like, a meaningful way. And then you get to episode 4, and it just basically turns into Pokemon.
Well, what happens in episode 4?
Okay, so to kind of explain that, so let's start off with the first 3 episodes, which basically revolved around the group of kids. They're just being constantly pursued by one of the bad guys. So the group of bad guys are called the 4 Gods. They're basically just the Elite 4. If we want to keep up this Pokemon metaphor.
Well, I mean, the 4 Gods is a trope that's in a lot of Japanese media.
Yes, I know, but like Pokemon
Buddha's
calls it
4
the Elite
warrior
4.
attendants.
Yes. And so they're being chased in particular by this one bad guy. I don't know his fucking name. He's the fedora guy.
He is a tipper supreme.
Yes, his Bubuki is a gun, and he's chasing these kids around for 3 episodes trying to kill them, because I guess the bad guys can't allow the kids to possess these dangerous weapons or something. And then you get to episode 4, and in a move that was in no way foreshadowed or hinted at prior to, the bad guy reveals this whole thing is like an elaborate game, and that the Bubuki users must face off with each other in like one-on-one battles, which kind of immediately undercuts the tone of the show thus far. And it also kind of conflicts with the fact that the bad guy, like, for the first 3 episodes, had no qualms about killing any of them. But now they just have to do these one-on-one battles. And these battles are conducted by people who have, like, the same Bubuki. So for example, Fedora Guy has the right hand of his Bubuki. So he
Stop saying it.
That's what they're called!
Collin, you have no idea how often the words Bubuki and Buranki are used in this show. It's like every other line.
So Fedora Guy has the right hand of his Buranki, and he must fight the girl on the hero's side who also has the right hand. And the show very, like, explicitly states that no one outside of this battle can interfere. And then it also immediately undercuts this by having the main character jump in front of Fedora Guy's bullets to shield, like, his ally. And he uses this stupid loophole that he's not interfering with the battle, he's just protecting himself. And it's like, fuck off. And as much as I appreciate the fact that this show is, like, trying to take the effort to develop its characters, it does so in, like, the most heavy-handed and contrived way possible. So, to kind of explain that, the right-hand girl, her father just so happened to be killed by the bad guy who has the right-hand weapon. And the left-hand girl just so happened to be mentored by the left-hand bad guy. And, I don't know if the show continues on like that and, like, handles the rest of the cast.
It does.
It does? Okay, great, perfect. It just reeks of stupid plot convenience and lazy writing that was really only necessitated because they put in this stupid, retarded system of Bubuki battles.
It's... the thing that makes this all even worse is that every single villain there's 5 of them actually. There's the 4 gods and then like a ringleader. Every single what? Every single one of them is written to be such an over-the-top farce of a character. Caricature is more apt. And they all dress like literal clowns. There's a few shots where they all kind of like line up and they walk flanking their leader. So it's like a dramatic ensemble shot. And it just looks completely ridiculous because they're all color-coded, wearing fanciful outfits that don't make any sense, and just displaying these completely over-the-top, beyond mustache twirling personalities. To sum this up, the fedora guy basically froths at the mouth at the chance of just shooting like an 8-year-old girl, and it's just ridiculous. The black guy, I don't know if you remember that character, Steve.
Yeah.
The yellow one, yeah. So he is also just horrible. I get that they're villains and you're not supposed to like them. Well, that's not even necessarily true, but they're villains and they want to make them easy to hate in this show. But it goes beyond like hating them in a way that serves the show and just crosses over into obnoxious, where it's just you quickly tire of their shtick. None of their like taunting lines are funny. They just act like obnoxious children, in addition to the children in the show who act like obnoxious children. It's a pain to sit through, and I've yet to drop it.
What?
It also doesn't help that like the show doesn't even take like a moment to breathe. So they'll beat one of the bad guys, and then immediately the next one will show up out of nowhere to challenge the next person.
They introduced 2 in the past episode.
Yeah, it's fucking ridiculous. And the first episode has this thing where the main character has a sister, and she just kind of disappears after the opening section of the show. And I can only assume it's leading up to the fact that she is the main bad guy, because the show would be dumb enough to do that.
Yeah. When are they going to get to the sister factory?
I don't know, because I've already hopped off the ride.
It's horrible.
And that's not to say there's no positives to be had here. Like, it's a CGI show, but for a CGI television show, it actually looks pretty good. It has, like, really good background art. I think it does a really amazing job at animating, like, the character faces. Like, they all have actual anime character expressions, which is usually the toughest thing that these shows deal with. But this is also kind of counterbalanced by the fact that, like, the show has, like, a ton of action in it, but in all the action stuff is really poorly animated. Pretty much all the fight scenes, in particular, they basically take the format of just the characters just collide one another in what are essentially still shots. There's like no weight or gravity to like any punch or kick, and it just stands out even more when you have these characters like freeze frame against like anime background in CGI. It looks awful. So this show is just like a complete mess from head to toe, and like I said, it's disappointing because I thought the first episode was actually pretty strong. But you know, once they introduced this whole Pokemon Bubuki battle shit, I just checked out.
Yeah, the show being just incredibly juvenile in the way it's written.
The dialogue is awful.
The way it's produced really earns the nickname Bubukis. So is that all you want to say about Bubukis?
Yeah, I got my piece out on this, so
okay.
Go ahead.
Well, a show that I dropped after about 5 episodes was Active Raid.
Wow, you went through 5 episodes?
Yeah, so I was under the assumption that Active Raid was secretly genius. So I watched the first 2 episodes, and all I could think of was, wow, this is extremely boring. But as I was watching it, I just noticed that like all the characters were really... So the plot of the show is that there's like this experimental police agency that uses like a train and battle suits, and they solve crimes. So that's the plot of the show. But every time that they'd go out on an assignment or a mission, they'd always be kind of bogged down by bureaucratic red tape. They would have to call several people to get permission to do the smallest thing, lest they break some regulation. And I really thought that the show was boring intentionally, as kind of like to play up that theme. of getting bogged down by bureaucracy.
I like a commentary on it.
Yes, and I think it was the episode where the girl donned her battle suit to do an idol pop performance. When I realized that no, this show is just dumb.
That was the
boring.
episode I dropped the show on.
It's just, and the premise is just so completely uninteresting. Even if it wasn't written with such like static pacing, that doesn't give you any kind of excitement, I just wouldn't be interested in watching it because it's just such a like hackneyed premise. It's like, okay, they're solving crimes with like mech battle suits. Okay, great. I really don't care.
Yeah, it feels super derivative. Like I've seen this like probably like 10 times before, and if the show at least brought like a new twist on it, or brought at least something interesting to the table, or took any sort of risk at all, I might have been okay with continuing. But there was just nothing. It was just boring. The battles are CGI, and the CGI is fucking horrible. The mech suits are like the worst looking mech suits I've ever seen in an anime. They're just super incoherent and have like no visual identity whatsoever. Every time they just went into battle, I just did not care.
They just have like rings around them for some reason that are non-functional.
Yeah.
And actually would seem to be a hindrance.
I actually watched the first episode of this show, and it wasn't until weeks later that I realized, oh shit, I watched the first episode of Active Raid.
And did you feel a desire to pick it back up?
No.
You made the right call.
Oh.
Made the right call in.
Shut up.
It's honestly, it's not like the most offensively bad show ever. It's just nothing.
I would the best way I can describe it is just being extremely boring.
Yep.
It's not inept, like extremely. It's not extremely inept. It's just boring. So, don't watch it.
Unless you're Kenny, who's still watching it.
Yeah, come on, Kenny, get it together.
Kenny will never listen to this.
No.
Matt, what did you drop this season?
All right, I only dropped one show so far because I wasn't. I never watched any of the other shit apparently, but that is Prince of Stride.
Oh baby.
So, so Prince of Stride, from at first it actually seemed like it might have been interesting. It has a very generic premise, basically. Basically, there's a sport called Stride, which is essentially parkour, with more focus on just running, just kind of free running.
So, are you saying they took the most interesting aspect of parkour and toned it down?
Yes.
Ah.
So, and this girl is like really into Stride, and so she goes to a school that was known for Stride, but apparently the Stride club there is like completely gone for some reason. There's like only a couple members, so we gotta save the Stride club. Have you heard this plot before? So
It sounds like Love Life, only with parkour.
Only
it
gay.
also sounds like Free, but basically, this show is just an excuse to get cute guys to grope each other, because that's really all that happens.
What's wrong with that?
Well, what's wrong with that is that it's just really boring and stupid. Like, so this was based off of a visual novel, and you can tell that it was based off of a visual novel because of how stupid and annoying most of the characters are. They're all very one-dimensional stereotypes.
Also, how self-inserty the main female character is.
Oh,
from
she
the
is-
other perspective.
She is the most blatant self-insert character ever, yeah. And the designs of these characters are just completely nonsensical and ridiculous.
Talk about
like-
that one guy's hair.
Oh, there's a boy in this show that has twin tails. He looks like a girl, and also his hair is split down the middle, black and blonde.
Oh my
Now,
god, wait.
can you explain why
that's-
that is?
Wait a minute. That was a guy?
That is a guy.
I've been seeing like images of that thing.
That is a guy. On top of that, this show has not one, but 2 Sephiroths. One of which has pink hair.
I got them confused the first time.
But
One
Matt,
of which has pink hair.
Why is that man's hair half one color, half blonde hair and half brown or black hair?
Oh, apparently he's like half. I don't know. Like, was it like half Japanese, half Russian, or something?
So are you saying that his ethnicities manifested themselves equally in his hair? Are you saying that they would write something that stupid?
I suppose so. Yes.
Oh my god.
On top of that, there's one character in the show who basically just is just like seems incredibly autistic and just goes around groping people, not understanding that you probably should not do that.
It's okay when guys do it.
And I actually didn't get this far. I dropped it after episode 2, where the guys go to one of the other guys' like sister's fashion whatever thing to have her like help fund this club or something. And in return, they have to try on all these outfits, and they have the one guy who looks like a girl dressed up in like basically cross dress. And I was like, okay, I think I know where this show is going now.
Let me say something about Princess Stride, because I could tell right away this is the most obvious Fujo bait ever show.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, it has parkour. I'm kind of interested. I'll give it a shot. It also kind of has like a bit of a Mirror's Edge aesthetic going for it, which I also liked.
Yeah.
And I was like, as long as the parkour is good, and as long as it doesn't get too gay, I can probably make it through. But like you said, the parkour is boring. It is just running, and occasionally they jump over a block or something. And then in the 4th episode, which is the one I dropped it, they go to the hot springs and start groping each other.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm clearly not the target audience here. I'm gonna drop this. And you know what? I think it's fine. I've watched plenty of like fucking shows that pander to me. I'm not gonna criticize a show for pandering to the other sex, but it's just not for me. I just wanted there to be a bit more than that.
Yeah, I will say here's the thing though. Like, it's fine to have a show that panders to the other sex for once. Like, I mean, I've said this before. Like, I'm watching fucking Free right now, and it's clear what who Free is for. The thing is though, Free has a lot of aspects to it where a completely straight guy can very easily enjoy the show if they can, kind of like, as long as they're fine with having some very, very nice shots of male aesthetics.
Uh-huh. And who is making this statement? A straight guy or a bisexual?
Oh my god.
Good point.
Yeah.
But I mean, I will say though that like nothing in Free actually does anything for me. So,
are you not attracted to anime?
Not how they're portrayed in this, but
Matt doesn't typically get on board with fan service shows of either sex. So
no,
I think he has a neutral position here.
I'm relatively neutral to fan service, yeah. But the thing with Free is that it is actually legitimately funny. The comedy is good. The animation is very good. The characters have actual character development. It's not boring. This show is fucking boring as shit. And the characters are just dumb. The comedy is really shitty. Like, I recall in the one episode, I think, like, one guy, like, suddenly is, like, dressed up like a cat or something. I don't know. I completely forgot, but it's just a dumb, like, everything that isn't the running is just really fucking dumb and a chore to get through.
It's a shame. I just want a good Mirror's Edge anime. Someone, please make that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone listening to this podcast? Okay, anyone want to add anything to Prince of Stride alternative? Yeah, I didn't think so. Frank.
What's up?
Did you drop anything this season?
Just one thing.
What's that?
Girls Beyond the Wasteland.
Oh boy.
baby.
Yeah, I dropped it at around 3 or 4 episodes because I just couldn't take it anymore. It's not an egregiously bad show. It's just horrendously boring and unimpressive. For those of you who don't know the premise, it's about a guy who actively writes plays for his school drama club, and he's approached by this loner girl in his class who looks suspiciously like fucking Snow Beneath the Snow bitch from Snafu. It also kind of reminds of Saikano, which I haven't seen yet, but I know that it's very similar to it.
Oh, I'll talk about that in a second, but go ahead.
Yeah.
And anyway, Snow Beneath the Snow asks him, "Hey, I want you to help me make a Bishoujo visual novel." And he's like, "All right, whatever, I guess I'll do it." And, you know, that's the premise. And it's really annoying. There's pretty much no humor whatsoever. The characters are all really bland. The animation is very flat. There's nothing that was really redeeming here that was keeping me entertained, so I just kind of dropped it.
So
Neat.
Funk, you want to go off on this, or should I?
Yeah, I got it. So, longtime fans of the podcast will remember how I described Sorega Seiyu as being Shirobako without the heart. Well, I would describe this show as being Saikano without the effort. It's because Saikano wasn't how did this phrase this? It wasn't like revolutionary. But you could tell that with this kind of somewhat bland premise that people were really trying. This is that premise taken to the absolute minimum. It's like if I gave a lot of people who needed to be, out by 4:00 on Friday the assignment of making a show of people who make a game, this is probably what they would turn out. It's just very lazy in just about every regard. Not the least of which being the title, which I hate.
It's pretty shit.
It just feels like there's no effort put into it whatsoever.
Yeah, it's just... I was watching it, and I didn't hate it that much, but I just kept asking myself, why am I watching this? There's no reason to watch this. It's just... Yeah, it's kind of offensive.
Yeah, I want to start off by saying that I don't know if it's entirely fair to automatically start comparing it to Saikano, but in a world where Saikano exists, and this show is attempting to do the exact same thing but worse, comparisons are going to be made. And I think that's important because it does help illustrate how this show really drops the ball in that regard. So I'll give you an example of what Saikano does well, and what it does a terrific job of doing is building up its characters and developing them at a reasonable and enjoyable rate. In addition, it's something that watching this show, Girls Beyond the Wasteland, gave me a greater appreciation of Saikano. And it's basically Saikano smartly contrasts the development of its characters to the development of the game they're making. So in Saikano, each character of that represents a specific aspect of the game, but instead of focusing on the day-to-day minutia of game development, which isn't really that interesting, it kind of correlates those things to the individual characters. So by building the relationship between those characters and the main protagonist, you end up seeing the themes of the game translated into something meaningful that we, the audience, can get on board with. But you take Girls Beyond the Wasteland, which again, fucking shitty title that I hate saying.
I keep wanting to say Beyond the Boundary,
So
another shitty show. Yeah,
in this show we're basically thrown right into everything at the start. The entire cast is pretty much assembled by the end of the second episode with very few issues. And instead of focusing on developing the characters, which is kind of made difficult by the fact that they throw so many of them at you right off the bat, this show kind of more focuses on the development of the actual game, which admittedly could be done well, but this show does not do that. And the best example of this I can give, I don't know, Funk, did you make it? How far did you make it in the show?
I made it to episode 3.
Okay, so in episode 4, which is the one I dropped it at, so the main character who is in charge of writing the scenario of the game, he's shown to be having writer's block, and at the start of the episode he's only managed to type up a few lines of text for the whole thing. But this issue is resolved no less than a minute later when the main girl tells him to just focus harder, and then he goes home and he writes the entire game in the span of 3 days, and he brings it back to the club and he shows them, and they're like, "Yep, this is good." And I think that was the exact moment when I tuned out, because like it was very clear the show was moving way too fast, and it was not going to approach the subject or its characters in like any meaningful fashion. It's just fucking garbage.
Sounds like basically the reverse of Shirobako, where they had to lock the fucking guy in the cage so we can get the last episode done.
You're not wrong.
I think we should take this moment to get beyond the wasteland.
We're stuck in it. We're stuck in it.
I'm all for that. Let's never speak of it again. Collin.
Fuck.
Yes, give it to me. I know. Give it to me.
Oh jeez.
The moment we've all been waiting for.
Let's go.
So this season, I had the pleasure of watching a show called Divine Gate.
Hey.
Which I picked this show up just to be a cheeky cunt, because there was another Gate show that's airing this season that I promised to watch more of, and I talked a lot of shit on it for 3 podcasts straight. And I was going to say, I was going to just watch this show so I could say on the podcast, well, at least there was one good Gate show this season.
How'd that work out for you?
Divine Gate is not just worse than Gate. It's monumentally, astronomically worse than Gate. This is a show that it feels like it's aimed at a younger audience, but then tries to be edgy in order to gain an older one. Like the sort of show, it is the 12-year-olds show. That's how I'd describe it. For an edgy 12-year-old, that's Divine Gate. It has some of the dumbest lines I've ever heard, and Steve's going to be able to share more because he made it to episode 3. I only made it to episode 2. I stopped episode 2. I couldn't complete it because of some of the dumbest shit I've ever heard. So let's first talk about how Divine Gate breaks new ground by having the character with fire powers have red hair, red eyes, red clothes, and a hot-headed personality. Just so that you can remember that he's the fire guy.
You're also forgetting a name that includes the word red.
Oh, really?
Yes. Same thing, then that follows suit for the other characters.
Does she ever say that things are heating up?
No, it's a boy.
Oh, okay.
So it's Wheeler from fucking Captain Planet.
Yeah, just throw on the Brooklyn accent. You know what? Actually, I obviously Frank's accent is not Brooklyn, but have Frank voice this character himself. So this main character, Aoto, is that how I pronounce it?
Aoto?
Aoto. He has the silliest. It feels like someone put it through a generator, and like this is what they got for his tragic backstory of his parents not paying attention to him, and then they mysteriously got murdered, supposedly by him. And now his parents only served him cold food, and now he can only eat cold food because he doesn't understand the pleasures of warm food. And so he put ice in his instant ramen. So his food can be cold. There are the opening line of this show already hits you over the head with the pretentiousness of it all. That just it boggles your mind with what exactly was the logic behind this line, where he talks about how the rain goes pitter patter and fills the holes in the street,
Yeah.
but it can never fill the holes in his heart.
That's the first line in the show.
And then in the second episode, a young boy is caught in a fire, and his father says, "I'm going to save you, son." And before he does anything, he freaks out and he falls to his knees. He doesn't even move from the spot that he's in. And our resident detective John Blake, hothead, goes to the dad afterwards, after they've saved the kid, and he's like, what the hell's the matter with you? You didn't even try to save your son." And then a brave, blonde-haired, water-based, ice-eating young gentleman stepped forward and said, "No, he did try to save his son. His mind wanted to save his son, but I'm not even sure. I don't remember how they phrased this next part, but seriously, he was afraid. He didn't save his son because he tried to save his son because he was afraid. That's what they're trying to say.
That excuses everything.
So that means he technically tried, because his mind wanted to save his son. And that's when I stopped watching the episode. I couldn't watch the episode.
That was episode 2?
Yes, and because this is treated. No one stops him and goes like, "Wait, that doesn't make any fucking sense." No one stops him and says this. This is treated as gospel.
Can I just mention something quick that I just learned? This is apparently based off a smartphone game.
Oh no.
Yes, and it's writing on par with what you'd expect from a smartphone game. So,
I guess it's more like a dumb phone game.
Why don't you share what the moment was that caused you to drop?
So let me set up this scene, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times I'll take a bath and I'll watch anime while I'm taking a bath because it's comfy. So I decided to do this with the 3rd episode of Divine Gate. So I put it on, and there's this scene where they're having this, I guess, kind of like a reception to welcome the main character into their group. Which, by the way, in the first 2 episodes, they went on and on about how this guy was a, quote, parent killer, as if killing your parents is the worst crime in the world. For some reason, they don't explain how that's worse than any other murder. I don't get it. But anyways, they kind of get over that and welcome him into this organization that they're all a part of. And the one of the girl character, I think, comes up and offers him a nice piece of chicken. And he's like, "I can't eat this chicken. I can't accept this chicken because it's warm," as Collin was talking about. And he also has this, like, kind of ghost kid following him around that no one else can see. I don't know if that's supposed to be his younger self or something. It's never explained. But
it will be explained.
Yeah, but, like, the ghost kid kind of comments on this and, like, yes, you refuse this, you reject this, just like your heart rejects warmth. And I threw my hands up in the bathtub, I got out, I dried myself off, I turned off the episode, and I went on with my life. And I never looked back at Divine Gate.
Okay, wait, guys, I remember the line.
Okay.
How they worded it. It was, he said that he consciously tried to save his child, but his subconscious prevented him. And he says the ratio of subconscious to conscious differs from person to person. Like, he was scared. He was scared.
I feel like it takes a lot. I've never met, or watched rather, an anime that was bad enough to ruin a bath, because that's a very high threshold.
Yeah,
it's a breach.
It was.
But I fully believe Divine Gate could get there. It was. I do want to say one positive thing about it, if you can imagine. I liked the heavy use of black and shadows in the art style. It reminded me of a comic book. And I say that as somebody who does not read comics, that's probably incorrect of me to say that. But it just, it's not that it was like there was a lot of color. It wasn't a dark show, but each of the characters was drawn to have a lot of shadow on them that wasn't like defined as
Yeah, I
pitch
see
black.
that. I see that. Yeah.
And I did like that. I did.
Well, I want to counter your positive with another negative, and that the fight scenes are all CGI and they
Why
look
did they
like
do?
shit.
Yeah, why did they do that?
There's no reason for them to be CGI.
There's no reason for this. They love live the shit out of themselves.
They did, yes. It's not the only season show this season that does that either, and we'll probably get to that. But yeah, avoid Divine Gate at all costs.
I am considering maybe picking it back up, maybe like for an episode or two,
You
just
absolute
to see,
madman.
just to see like where it goes. And I just want to note, since I did mention it, and I'm gonna mention, I'm gonna go way more in depth with it when we get to the actual podcast. But I have not watched the episode 6 of Gate's second cour yet. But Gate has made some major Prince of strides this season that have improved the show quite a bit for me. So, Kenny, rest easy. I'll have some nice things to say about Gate next podcast.
I don't even know you anymore.
I'm looking forward to it.
But that doesn't mean it also highlighted some other issues, but whatever. Just keep on keeping on.
We'll get there when we get there.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't think any of you watched this show, Undefeated Bahamut Chronicle or whatever.
What?
You guys smartly avoided the show if you even knew it existed. It is another super generic school battle anime that was one season too late to the party. And I don't even know why I watched this. I watched 2 episodes. It was exactly as dumb and generic as the most generic school battle harem shit.
Now, was it as creatively bankrupt as Asterisk?
It was worse.
Oh, wow.
Because it didn't even have, like, an interesting setting or anything like that. It was just medieval shit. I don't... Have any of you watched Infinite Stratos, Frank?
I was thinking about it. It's on my plan to watch list. I haven't seen it yet.
Infinite Stratos is basically the anime that repopularized this school battle harem.
Yeah, I knew
And
that, but
this show is like a literal copy of that show, like in every way. So it's shit. It doesn't even bring anything new to the table for this genre. I don't even know why I watched it. I can't even give you a satisfactory answer to it. It's garbage. And that's all I have to say about it.
Nice.
Funk.
Let's see. I don't have anything else that I really need to rail against, but there's a couple more shows that I dropped. I dropped Phantasy Star Online 2, the animation.
But that show's so good in a bad way.
I couldn't stand it. I hated the feeling that, and this is less a feeling and more the straight mission statement of the show, but I hated the feeling that I was just constantly being advertised to.
You are?
Yeah, exactly. And it became less like fun romp with this video game as like a background inspiration and more of just a literal commercial. And it was at that point that I really just couldn't stomach it anymore, because when you remove yourself from it in that way, it really is just the most generic school setting high school show. And I don't even really know what the plot is, because nothing that happens in Phantasy Star Online 2 is consequential to the anime. It's just a video game in the show's canon.
I can explain a bit if you want.
Please.
So, we haven't really gotten there yet, but it seems like it's building to a plot where elements of the game are encroaching into the real world, not unlike Digimon. There's occasionally like Phantasy Star monsters that appear, and like the main character kind of sees them, but then they're gone. So I think it's building up to that. To be honest, I can offer like an impassioned defense of this anime because I kind of like it, even though also acknowledging it is a blatant commercial for the game. But I like how the fact that, unlike all other video game anime adaptations, this one does not just literally adapt the plot of the game, because most of those end up being garbage, and at least this one does something different. In that it's really silly. This whole school is about like every kid in the school plays Phantasy Star Online 2, and they act like it's the most important thing in the world. And I kind of like how seriously they take this stupid fucking video game. The main character is basically made the vice president of the student council, and it's his job to play the game and then file reports on his experience playing the game. It's really silly, but there's also kind of like there's a dynamic between him and the student council president who is super cute, and I kind of like their relationship. It's generic and there's really nothing special about it, but I don't know. It's just kind of fun in a really dumb way. If you go into it, don't expect high art or anything, but if you want to watch a dumb story about people taking video games seriously, it's not the worst one out there.
I wasn't offended enough by it to really to go against you on this, but it was just such a turn off to, because so anything that's an adaptation of something else is essentially going to be a commercial, right?
Yeah.
But when it's just an adaptation, you're not. Rather, when it's done like this, like Phantasy Star Online 2: the animation, you have the opportunity for characters in the show to literally say how good the game is. Like their lines of dialogue are just pitches. Whereas when you adapt anything else, it's not self-aware. Like no one's talking about no one's reading the manga that it's adapting and saying that it's a good read. You know? So just that extra layer of egregiousness is really what put me off.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even be mad at you or anyone else who dropped the show, but I don't know. I just find it like charmingly stupid. So I'm probably going to stick with it.
Well, more power to you. I can't wait to hear what you think of it at the end of the season.
Probably not much different. I don't expect it to go anywhere interesting, but I don't know. I'm willing to be surprised. Does anyone have anything else? Funk, did you drop Luck and Logic yet?
I did. I was about to say it. Actually.
Okay, let's talk about that, because I do have some things to say about Luck and Logic.
Okay, a show that contains neither.
Well, I mean, it does have like the biggest fetish for the words logic and paradox I have ever seen.
Yes, but not enough to look up the definition of these words. It's just, but obviously they're foreign words, so it's like whatever, who cares? But I don't even really know where to begin with this. Why don't you lead this discussion?
God, how do you even describe? Okay, so
yeah, right.
Okay, so the anime is basically about this group of people who are responsible from protecting people for these monsters that spawn into the world. The monsters are called foreigners. Which, it sounds silly if you put it into other contexts, but whatever. And they God, how do you even describe the show?
I don't really know. Okay, so
let me just describe like a basic episode of the show.
Okay.
So one of the characters will have like a problem or an issue, and she or he is not being a team player. And then they'll go out and fight the monster who is like
tailored
related
to that flaw that they have in the episode.
Exactly, yeah. And they'll kind of lose, or the monster will get away, and then they'll go back to base and argue or something, and then the alarms will go off again. They'll go fight the monster again, and the main character will come in and help the girl, and she'll overcome a problem. Repeat ad nauseum for every fucking character in the show. It's really dumb.
Well, I think I can describe the way the foreigners vaguely work. So what happens?
They're basically Digimon.
Well, okay, so yeah, a foreigner invades our world. I think it's an alternate dimension thing, and creates what's called a paradox zone, which is kind of like a sphere of influence in which it can really just fuck shit up. And our heroes are a team that go into those zones, capture the foreigner, and peace is restored. To do this, because they're just regular people, they don't have any superpowers, but what they do is what's called trance with another otherworldly being that more or less looks like a human. I think they're goddesses.
Yes, they are goddesses.
They are goddesses, and by trancing with them, which manifests itself as making out with them, the two combine into one body that has supernatural gear and powers, and thus they are equipped to fight foreigners. But there's like a limit to their powers, and it's really arbitrary. Whenever they need to heighten attention, they stop trancing because they reach their limit. It's really stupid. And it's kind of just an excuse to see all these anime girls making out.
But even then, they skimp out on it.
Yeah, that's
half
true.
The time.
It's true. It's like picture your typical magical girl transformation, but with two people, and you can kind of get a sense for how this is done.
Yeah.
So that's the concept of the show. Is this very monster of the week. We learned less in episodes. All the characters are the basic tropes you would expect in any given anime team. Like they're not really breaking any new ground, except the only likable character on the show is this one guy who is impossibly chuny, and everybody just ignores him, and it's actually pretty funny.
The episode where he's introduced, they build him up as being some kind of really interesting or powerful character.
Yeah, like a threat maybe.
Yeah, and it turns out he's anything but.
Yeah, and it's just that worked for me. I enjoyed that. But the rest of the show is kind of a mess. Would you say it's a mess?
Yeah, there are a couple scenes in particular that I like fucking shook my head at.
All right, so why don't you describe that GIF to us?
So, yes, there's a scene where a character is riding a bike in the rain, and she just, like, bikes up the side of a bus and jumps over, like, a line of school kids at a street crossing in the most physics-defying stunt I have ever seen in anime.
The best part is that she could have just drove around them.
She could have, yes, but that would not have been as poorly animated as this scene was. And that was like the scene where I checked out, but also didn't drop the show. I'm still watching it. I'm probably gonna finish it.
No way. Well, I guess if I can finish Bubuki, you can finish Luck in the Left.
Yeah, I feel like I need one really dumb show that I hate, but I have to finish. There's also a show that demonstrates like how none of the scenes in the show have any emotional weight to them. They get into this battle, and the main character gets like a truck thrown on top of him, and then it just cuts to the scene in him in the hospital. But then like 3 minutes later, he's out of the hospital with no repercussions to that attack whatsoever and goes to save the day. It just like speeds through any sort of attempt at character development that they're trying. God, this show is so fucking dumb. It still fucking annoys me how often they use the terms logic and paradox. It's like every other line, they're talking about someone's logic card, or their logic rate, or they're committing a logic drive, or the fucking heroes in the show are called logicalists, whatever the fuck that means. They just take these real words and apply them to terms and don't explain what they mean. See, Some of them you can get the concept of.
What, you mean like JJ in Star Trek?
Yes.
Oh, but I can, like I said before, I can somewhat forgive that because it's non-Japanese words, so the average audience member is probably not going to realize that it's just horse hockey. But from our perspective, it is pretty grating.
Yeah.
I actually don't have anything else to say, so I don't know why I said it.
I pretty much got out my piece on this one too. So, the only other show I dropped this season was Aokana. I don't know what it's fucking called. It's based on an adult visual novel. So you know it's gonna be bad. The only reason I picked up this show is because the opening was done by Mami Kawada, which is a horrible reason to start any show, but I did it anyways. I only made it 2 episodes. Basically the show is about how humanity has like mastered flight, and everyone has these shoes that allow them to fly, but apparently only students have them or something, and they can only use them to fly to and from school, otherwise they get in trouble. And the only thing they really use them for is to play this stupid sport that involves like 4 flying pylons, and they just fly between them and touch them to score points.
Wait, this
And
is an
that's all it
adult
is.
visual novel?
This is an adult visual novel. It wasn't terrible, but I mean, it was super generic. There was nothing to it. I just realized my mistake right away and dropped it.
On the subject of realizing your mistakes right away, I watched an episode of... No, I'm sorry. I watched 10 minutes of an episode of Norn+9: Norn+Nonet.
Still the worst title of any anime this season.
Yes, which quickly spends the first 10 minutes establishing the harem of men that the self-insert female main character, Phantasy, if you will, is going to be interacting with for the course of the show as they fly around in their spaceship. It's... I knew exactly what it was once, I got a little bit into it, and wisely I just dropped out. It's a very cut and dry story of coming to your senses.
As usual with a winter season, it's often a dumping ground for garbage like this, so it's not surprising there's so many drop shows. Did anyone else in this call have anything else they dropped, or?
In the
Oh my god!
Of thoroughness, I did have one more show. I technically have 3 more, but 2 of them started airing in the previous season, so I'm not going to count those. I also dropped Nijiiro Days, which is not as bad as anything else that I've dropped, but it had nothing going for it. It kind of reminds me of a free type show. What's the opposite of gals being pals?
Jeez. I don't know the parallel here.
Boys being
boys. I don't know.
Okay, well, it's just these 4 high school...
Myron?
Myron? Eh? So it's these 4 high school boys, and it's a slice of life show. One of them has a love interest, and they're friends. It's very, very little going on, but it was lively. It had a little bit of humor that worked here or there. It didn't look bad. Actually, I kind of enjoyed the opening theme, but the thing is, it just didn't really excel in anything, and I got so one of the characters, no, I'm sorry, 3 of the main characters, their personalities are just so like eye-rollingly just stupid that I just couldn't grow to like them at all over the 4 episodes that I watched. I just had to drop it, and they're the main characters. It's like one of them is just super. What's the name? How do you describe this archetype? Somebody who's just kind of like really cold and mysterious, and
Kudere?
Maybe is that actually what that is?
Kudere could be.
All right, well, maybe that. I've never heard that term before, but one of many Dares. But because of that, they never, at least maybe they do later, but they never gave him a chance to open up and get to know him, so it's just like, okay, whatever, boring. One of the characters is just like very one-note ladies' man, never goes anywhere, so you instantly know his whole shtick. And the other guy is just completely typical high schooler with no notable characteristics except that he just carries around a whip. And it's just like, this is just so stupid. I tapped out after 3 or 4 episodes. It was like, ugh. Couldn't do it.
Yeah, winter season in a nutshell. A lot of times, I watch more shows this season than I normally do, and I guess it probably explains why I dropped like 7 of them. But oh god, there was some real shit this season.
I'm curious if there's anything else like approaching the dropping block. Ooh, I know there's not. Fuck you. That was a good pun.
Sorry.
I do know you said you actually you dropped Konosuba, but I wasn't sure if you were gonna pick it back up.
Oh, I did drop Konosuba. So I wasn't completely truthful in describing my. But I am planning on giving that another go.
Okay.
Based on hearing you guys
I think you'll
talk
be
about
pleasantly
it.
surprised.
I haven't dropped Fan World yet, but every time I watch it, I get closer and closer to.
Oh,
Hey.
what a cuck.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, Frank. We still forgive you. Okay, so I think that covers it for the drop list.
So on to the meat of this podcast.
Yeah, we're going to take a quick break
The
before we do
meat.
that, though. And we'll be right back and talk about openings and endings.
Oh, baby.
And welcome back to the Luckycast. So we're going to move into discussions about the openings and the endings of the season.
Yay.
And I put this in the podcast specifically for Funk, so I'm gonna let him lead the discussion on it.
Well, let me bring up my notes. I was scrambling to put together at the 11th hour to not sell this segment short in a bit of alliteration. So I think it's best to start with the opening because that's obviously where you would logically start. One opening I wanted to talk about amongst many would actually be Phantom World's opening, which actually strikes me as a little bit cheesy. I believe you, Steve, likened it to a 90s cartoon theme song, and that it has like a little cheesy rap section in it.
Was that me? I think it was someone else.
That was me, actually.
Oh, sorry, fam.
Yeah.
Sorry. So one thing I want to point out that I love about that song, and something that's super, super minor, is so during the rap section, I don't know what exactly the word is that the singer says, but the end of one of the lines is something that sounds like Hachi. And it's just so pleasing to me hearing that. I can't even describe it. Just the way that line flows and the way that it ends with the quote word Hachi just is immensely pleasurable to me. But more to the point, this song is emblematic of a theme that I noticed this season amongst both openings and endings, is that this season is the revival of the slap bass technique amongst anime composers. And it is a dank time to be alive. I cannot get enough of that, and I look forward to hearing this song every time I watch the show. It is fantastic. I don't know if I call it my favorite, but that's largely because I haven't chosen a favorite yet. It's very difficult, but I would say this song is up there. Does anybody have any strong feelings about this, or should I just be rambling right now?
No, this was the first opening of the season that really captured my attention. And I thought it was actually going to be my favorite of the season. I don't think it is, but it's definitely top 3 for me. Yeah, I do actually want to agree with you because I'm not hugely a fan of rap, but I feel like for these kind of cheesy anime openings, it does work well as kind of like a backing for it.
Listen for that Hachi. Listen for that Hachi.
I actually just did. It's pretty great.
It's so good.
Yeah, I really like it. It's a good opening. It does kind of remind me of older anime. Everything about the show kind of reminds me of something from the 90s for some reason. I don't know what it is.
Is it the monsters, the phantoms that look like Digimon from the 90s?
I guess so. Yeah, probably. It just feels like something that would have come from that era.
Omega, count the number of times I've referenced Digimon in this podcast. It's been a number.
So I want to point out, just as a quick little putting Steve on blast embarrassment moment.
Oh no! Is this about Dimension W?
No. This is still relevant to this, to
Okay.
Phantom World. I had to describe to Steve what slap bass sounds like
No.
because he didn't know.
Listen, I can barely pick out certain instruments in a song. Funk, I'm not good at this.
I know. I'm not I don't put too much blame on you, but I did just want to embarrass you on your
That's
podcast.
fine. Consider me embarrassed.
Okay,
All you have to do is say it sounds like the Seinfeld opening.
oh, that's true. That is a good example. But moving on to a theme that anybody who's heard it can surely agree is utterly fantastic, and I know Matt will. The theme to Haruchika, which is amazing. It is so good. So it starts with like this really kind of triumphant, like almost royal intro with a lot of orchestral instruments, and then it kicks into a more rock instrumentation. But I think the best part about this song is the interplay between the main and backing vocals, the female and male vocalists respectively in this little band. Matt, has that stuck out to you as something that's been great? Because let me tell you, it's great.
Oh yeah, it's a really it's a really great opening. I just like just the back and forth, the melody that plays at some points that really for some reason reminds me. I don't know if anybody here knows what I'm talking about when I say this, but it sounds very reminiscent of the Bridge Zone theme from Sonic.
On the
Bridge
Game Gear?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's good music. I like that theme.
Yeah, it like that's the like the beginning of this song, and it comes out earlier near the end of the opening. I mean, later near the end of the opening. What am I? Oh my god! But it sounds very similar to that song. But yeah, it's a good opening that this show does not deserve.
No, it doesn't. But it's far and away a fantastic piece of music. One thing I really liked about it is that I think it flows very well between its various sections, particularly the chorus and the part after it are linked together very well and very smoothly. A lot of times you'll listen to songs and if anybody's familiar with it, the theme to Gankutsuo opening theme to Gankutsuo is culprit of this, where it just kind of like writes two pieces of music in the same key and just mashes them up against each other, such that it's very clear where one section ends and the other begins. Whereas in this song, they lead into each other much more smoothly. It's much more well written, and it just pays dividends because the song, in one point, it builds to such a climax when the translated lyric that plays at the time is like about harmony being born or something, and of course that's being sung by two people at once, so it's like poetry. It rhymes. But it's that part is such a fantastic climax, but what really sells it is the descent right after that into the next section, and it gets me every time I listen to it. It's so good. And then shortly after that, the opening section kind of plays again in the background, loops back in on itself. It feels fantastic. These people, I don't know the name of this band. Someone mentioned it earlier, and I forget. But they do consistently great work in anime, in themes and openings and endings. So if you have time, and this goes for people in the podcast as well, go to Haruchika's Mal page by Anime List and just find the people who did the opening theme and look at their other work, look up those songs, and have a good time listening to them because they're so good. Cannot recommend it enough. It's also worth mentioning that given the show's theme or setting of like the school band, that they go through the effort of incorporating those kind of instruments that would be in the brass club or in an orchestra into the song, but not in a heavy-handed, eye-rolling way. So it's just a great job.
So Funk.
Yes.
I realize I'm never going to win an argument about music with you, but I do want to bring up my favorite opening of the season, which is Dimension W's.
Here we go.
Which you took umbrage with it before when we talked about it, and you did explain quite well why you didn't like it. And I can't really fight you on it as someone who can't really pick apart music and explain even why I like it. I just really love this opening. So
Well,
I'll give you the chance to retort if you'd like.
Well, I have a different memory of this discussion than you seem to, because when I explained it to you, I don't recall actually having like a list of good reasons for why I didn't like it. It was more of a taste thing.
He said he didn't really like the
genre,
just the music genre. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even really know what to call it. Anyone have an idea, like what you would call that kind of music?
I guess just like kind of like break or whatever it's called.
Future dad rock? I don't know.
Yeah, future dad rock.
Break?
Not break sounds right. And I'm not a big fan of that, but I think another sticking point for this song is I watched Gangsta 2 seasons ago. And the guy did the same guy did the theme for this and for Gangsta. And his work is, at least as what these two would indicate, is very one note. Like, these two songs sound very similar stylistically.
Mm-hmm.
And not to say that obviously artists are going to write within the same genre, that's what they like, but they still felt very non-distinct amongst themselves. There's probably a better word for that. So that kind of turned me off it a little more, but it's really just my distaste for the genre combined with the, and this is a silly argument to take, but the English also kind of put me off a little bit, which is actually the same thing happened in the Gangsta opening, funnily enough. But I don't have great reasons for disliking it. I think that it's very defensible to say this is a good song. I just happen to disagree.
Well, we can certainly all agree that Kiyoma's dance in the opening is fucking perfect.
It's fantastic. And then the second dance is also good on top of the trailer.
Yeah.
They I don't know who made that executive decision, but bless their heart.
It's timed really well to the music.
Yeah, it's good. Matt, you liked Dimension W's theme, right?
Oh yeah, I love this opening. It's not my favorite of the season, but it's fucking great. It's
Why don't you? Yeah, what's so great about it?
It's like everything. Just I don't know. It's just a very, very hype opening for the show, and it really gets you. It just really gets me in the mood to see, like, what the show has to offer, like what we're gonna see this episode. Like, it just.
Mm-hmm.
It's I'm not really sure. I'm not good at describing music myself, really, but it's just the.
It seems like the perfect kind of opening for that kind of show.
Yeah, it feels like a very sci-fi-ish kind of music, like something that you would hear in like a future setting for some reason to me.
Yeah, and I would actually agree with Fun, because I too watched Gangsta, and I didn't really have strong feelings about that opening. Whereas even though this one like sounds very similar, this one does it for me, whereas that one did not.
I will concede that is a good stylistic choice to have the genre match up more with the setting. And I didn't actually think about that before, so that does make a lot of sense. Yeah.
And I was just gonna say also, the visuals help a lot too. Like the opening of this show, not like just everything about this opening is fucking perfect.
I love the sliding faces.
And
the fucking car chase.
The car chase is amazing. I love that little segment just because, not only because of how cool it looks, but also that's one thing that the show does really well, is making CG look good. And like the CG that's used in this opening car segment, like, is just really good looking.
It's super fluid. I mean, you can tell it's CG, but it doesn't bother you.
Yeah,
because it runs well.
Yes, I actually haven't noticed that it's CG, and maybe that's just me being not having a good eye for detail.
I think that's just a testament to how good the CG is.
Yeah, if it's bad CG, you almost always notice it. So.
Good for them. Good for Studio X, whose name I don't know. Yeah. So another theme I think that we can all commiserate on and just kind of jizz about. Erased's opening.
Yes, fantastic.
It's so good.
It's amazing. I love the little muted riff that plays at the beginning, but I love even more when it reappears in the background throughout the song. it's the more you listen for it, the more you hear it, and it always just feels good because it's well written. It's very short and simple, but when you realize that the whole song is built around that, it doesn't just abandon it after the beginning. It just magnifies it more and it becomes even better. Anybody else have anything they want to say about that? Or
I really like the use of the ride symbol in the song. In the I think it's in the chorus where you see, I'm a drummer, so I always notice drumming things, and I really love how much ride symbol is used in that section. It's very faint, but it's pretty crazy how much is going on with the drums at that part.
Is that one? I don't even really know how to describe this, but there's like, I think there's a lot of like 16th notes, right, on the ride.
I think so. Yeah, it's like just really a lot of really fast, kind of like offbeat ride notes going on that are like I guess a way to kind of just to compare it to another song, kind of like YYZ, with like how the ride works in that song. Very similar to that.
Now here's a question, because I haven't paid too much attention to that specifically in the theme here, but I always like when drummers make good use of the bell on the ride symbol. Is that at work here?
Yeah, you mean like the very kind of like the very
middle.
Light, yeah, like the middle. Yeah, that's what you hear. That is what he's using. That's
fantastic,
and it's really good sounding. It just sounds great. I mean, the beat of the song is also just it's kind of that I guess it's kind of a disco-ish beat. Just the song is just fucking fantastic all around. You could tell that this was like a song made by a really it's Kung
Fu Generation, right?
Yeah, Asian Kung Fu Generation.
I've heard the name, and I actually think, funnily enough, DL did one of their songs at karaoke, but I haven't heard anything else from them besides this. Again, maybe one of their songs.
They do one of the Full Metal Alchemist openings. They don't do I don't think they do as many openings as they used to, but they were pretty big in the anime scene like a decade ago.
Well, they're still cranking out the hits, as this proves. Because that song is dope.
Pretty great.
Another dope opening that I actually took a little bit to warm up to, and Steve, maybe you can echo that sentiment, is the opening to the second season of Ass Class.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, so I made a post about this a couple weeks ago. It's become a running theme that the Ass Class openings are kind of shit, and then after a few weeks they're just genius.
It has such a good hook.
It's got so much energy to it, and I think it really worked. I was disappointed when I first started watching it because I was like, oh, I don't know why, because when I watched the first season, I really liked the opening to the first season. I thought right away that it was catchy as hell, and I was like, this is gonna be fucking infectious. So when I watched the opening of the second season, I was like, oh wait, this isn't as good. And then maybe at around like maybe episode 3 or 4, so I was like, nah, this is great. Like, I don't know. It has a way of getting under your skin.
It's just so my favorite thing about it is towards the latter half of it when they're doing the whole question thing.
Mm-hmm.
I really like how the first I think the lines are split into 4, and the first 3 are sung by one person, and then the whole chorus comes in for the 4th one. It's a very, I guess, obvious choice to make, especially when you have so many different people singing. But it just really, really lends it just that much more energy, and it's just a really kind of hype thing. It just works very, very well for me.
I do like when anime keep like consistency between their openings, because like all 3 of the Ass Class openings sound very similar because they're all done by the same voice actors in the show. So they all have some kind of like the same energy to them, and I just like when they're not drastically different.
it does feel nice, and even the two ending themes are also stylistically similar, if not similar in quality.
Yeah, I would say this season's is really not very good.
Yeah, but it's nice that they made the effort to make it consistent.
Yeah.
Another good one, and I believe Matt is also on board here. The opening to Dagashi Kashi.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
It is actually my favorite of the season.
I wish I liked this one more than I do, but
Matt, tell me about those drums, and then I'll tell you about that bass.
Okay.
We'll each play to our strengths here.
Well, it's definitely more than the drums, but the fucking drums in this song are so good. The thing about me is I really love songs that just go crazy with fills, and this song is it's filled with fills. There's like mainly in the verses. Like the verse is just so fucking good because you have this drum that's kind of doing a lot of like ghost notes with the snare, and then at these random parts it'll just do these like really fast rolls all over the drums. That's just really awesome sounding, and I love it so much. It's just so satisfying to listen to all those rolls, and especially at the end of the song where it finishes, and it just finishes with one last big roll. It's like, it's like, it's great. It's so good.
I don't like. This is gonna sound very hackneyed because I feel like I'm repeating myself, but just having all those fills just like really just gives it that much more oomph. The song.
Yeah.
But it's much harder to describe than it is to feel. If you could just imagine those as just continuing the straight beat, just like without any variation, the song is just so much worse for it.
Oh yeah.
But continuing what I started this whole discussion with, this song continues the campaign of getting that dank slap bass in there. And just as in the Phantom World opening, it is dank here. It is like I'm just gonna repeat myself again. This just bears repeating. Slap bass is the best. It's best to play. It's best to listen to. It's so good. And the way that usually the role of bass is to work well with the drums. Obviously, play the bass on the same time that the bass drum's going. You have a very solid song. Take that one step further. Drums going crazy, make the bass go crazy too. How do you do that? Slap bass. Bam, nailed it. But the two don't conflict, which is very important, because if you have a slap bass going, it's very percussive. And if you're upsetting the drum fills, that's just going to ruin the song. And obviously that doesn't happen here. They nailed it. It's the testament to the talent of both those musicians, and probably to the composer as well, and by probably I mean definitely. But it is, it's all comes together in such a good way. And the one thing I don't like is the song kind of cools down a little bit at the chorus, and you mentioned this with the drum fills kind of slowing it down a bit. But I recognize that you can't be all fast all the time, but it is kind of like a mood killer. It's similar to the chorus of the intro to Nozaki-kun, if anybody's watched that. But overall, it's such a great song. It's not my favorite of this season, but it is very fantastic. And I think there's an English fantastic song in that song, which is very.
There's actually a fair amount of English in it.
Perfect.
It's much harder to really hear. I mean, there's one part where she says "boy meets girl" in the song. I actually really like that. I don't know why, but I just really like that part too.
So this next one, I might need to call for some outside assistance on. Collin.
What the fuck?
How dope, Collin? How dope is the intro theme to Rakugo?
Oh, wow! It's great.
It's fantastic. What do you like about it, Collin?
Well, let's see. The way it starts, and you get that sensual voice just kicking in, and it immediately just grabs your attention. It pulls you in. And it's not like a vocally intensive song or anything, but the voice is so captivating that I'm just immediately sucked in. And that's like going without like what's obviously you're gonna know the instrument better than I do. What's the opening like couple chords on whatever instrument that is?
I forget exactly how the song's laid out. The opening melody, I think, is like a clarinet. But if you're just talking about what's behind the vocals, that's just an upright bass.
Okay, yeah, that's what it sounded. It sounded like a bass.
Yeah.
Obviously,
and
I don't know about my bass nuances, but I knew it was a bass.
Good call. But I was actually going to comment on that myself. I love how there's a lot. You can kind of hear the bass being played, if you can get what I mean. You don't just hear the notes. You hear it being played. You hear like the slight vibration of the string against the fretboard. You hear it being plucked. You hear a lot of the action on it, which gives a very good impression of just kind of like, being there, in the jazz bar.
Yes, yeah, it sounds like a bar, yeah.
And that works so well. I think the opening melody on like what I said might be a clarinet, not quite sure. I think it's very almost haunting in a way, but obviously in a great way. I think it works very well. And you mentioned the almost sensual nature of the vocal performance,
yes,
which matches up very well to Bone's Rakugo style that he develops. Oh my god!
Oh, at you.
Oh damn, girl! But it's a very unique theme amongst anime openings, which is kind of like a breath of fresh air. It's not at all poppy. Not to say pop music's bad, but it's again distinct, which is very much appreciated. So just lovely. I could go on.
Like high quality bottled water.
What?
Easy to swallow.
Yeah. You Californians, you. So one other opening I wanted to talk about was, and I only want to talk about like 4 bars of this opening, but the opening to Grimgar, when that fiddle kicks in, it's so good. There's like a fiddle solo that plays after a small intro, and that woman fiddles their heart out. And it's just the most spirited thing. It really gets you in the mood for high adventure. And then it just kicks into a bunch of distorted guitars. But I wanted to say that I actually think that song is very well written. Like, I like everything going on there. I just think it's poorly arranged. I think you could re-record that song with different instrumentation, even keep the same tempo, and it would be much better. I think there's kind of a clash. I think that, and maybe it's intended, but just have more acoustic instrumentation. You could have a really good song. Because I like I don't think the vocal style matches the more harsh instruments. I don't think the tone of the show does either. So that seemed kind of like a misfire to me. But in my favorite openings of the season, I still needed to mention that fiddle solo. Does anybody have any words on Grimgar's opening?
There did need more fiddle.
I honestly can't remember well enough.
There needed to be more fiddle.
The fiddle is the only part I remember.
Well, it is the dankest. Before I transition into EDs, I would like to open the floor to anybody who has an OP that they think is worth discussing that I have not yet touched on.
I guess I could take this chance to mention Ajin's opening. Ajin's opening, which is actually very good for this type of show. It's kind of like like nobody's here has heard it, obviously, but it's like, considering how heavy the show is with like I said before, with like the violence and stuff, it's not really that like heavy of a song itself. It's actually kind of it actually has kind of a funky beat to it,
Really?
It's like a mix of like a kind of dance beat with these distorted guitars. I'm trying to think of something to really compare it to, like a band to compare it to, but I can't really think of anything. But it's a very catchy opening, and it has this nice little thing where during the verses, like you just have the guitar is very muted in the background, and it doesn't play very much. It's just like these like it'll like do like the singer will sing a line, and then the guitar will be like dun 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 dun, and like it's just done very well when you hear the song. But and the singer of the song is just really good as well. It's just a really good opening. So I would highly, if you don't watch the show, at least watch the opening, because it's a very, very catchy opening.
I'll be sure to check it out. I do like the kind of, at least the impression I'm getting from you, the idea of kind of interplay or call and response between the guitar and the vocalist.
Mm-hmm.
That does seem intriguing. And you know me, I'll take a funky beat any day of the week.
Uh-huh.
Speaking of funky beats, let's talk about Gakko-chan's opening, bro.
I speaking of like wormholes and lost perception of time and stuff like that. Yeah. So Frank, what do you like about Gakko-chan's opening?
I like the fact that it's like a 7-minute show and it takes up like so much precious time, and to reintroduce the characters all over again every time
in slightly different ways.
Well, yeah, I like they throw those little quirky facts about them every episode.
Yeah, it's cute. And I like Konosuba doesn't have that bad of an opening either, honestly.
Collin loves it.
Yeah,
it's okay.
Excuse me?
I threw it in there. You love Konosuba's opening.
I said the ending, you shit.
Oh no, I fucked up.
I said tell them that I liked the ending.
What does he do? Say the opening.
Yeah, I
don't mind the opening either, though.
The opening's good.
Can the audience ever trust Steve again?
Find out in 6 weeks.
Also, I don't know if this counts.
Luckycast.
I don't know if this counts, but Osamatsu-san's second opening is very good too.
Oh yeah.
Can we talk about how I lose my shit every time Juicy Matsu flies in at the start of that song?
It's so funny.
The one thing that gets me about that, it is slightly mistimed from the music. It's just ever so slightly out of sync.
Yeah, I noticed that too, and that bothers me as well.
But that theme I actually didn't like it very much at first, but I also really warmed up to it.
It was weird because like it played in the middle of the episode during the first episode where it aired. So, like, I was like, wait, is this a new like ending theme? Because like it sounded like it could be an ending theme at first, and then it played at the beginning of the next episode. I was like, wait, what?
It does commit my cardinal anime song sin.
Which is what?
Which is and longtime listeners will know, it's when people shout shit on the offbeats.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
God damn it, Frank.
What's wrong with that? I love that.
It's objectively the worst.
How about at the very ending?
Do that a lot.
How about at the very ending when instead of where you can clearly hear singers singing Osomatsu-san, but then you have like other people just screaming Osomatsu-san, and it's like just overshadowing this actual singing.
It's not ideal.
No.
I would like to give a special shout out to Heavy Object's second opening, which is awesome. And I would also like to give a shout out to the fact that I still haven't dropped that show. It keeps on trucking.
Like 15 weeks strong, Steve. Good job. We're like 18.
Yeah.
How do you live?
Hey, listen, it's actually gotten a little better. It's not great, but it's better than it used to be.
Wow, that's very tolerable. So on that note, are we gonna glide smoothly into endings?
I mean, if that was your segue, probably not.
What was that?
That wasn't a segue. That was the question.
Question.
Oh, fuck you. So, One ending that I really super enjoyed that I wanted to give a shout out to. The first show to have both its opening and ending called out was Dagashi Kashi, which has a very lovely ending theme, and again, as other shows have, has a genre that is very unique and distinct from other anime songs. So the ending theme to Dagashi Kashi sounds very much like a Spanish influenced kind of song. Like it's not quite like mariachi band. I wish, but not quite. But what it has is got like a very aggressive kind of pounding acoustic guitar in the background that goes along with like the 4 on the floor beat. So it's just like something you can very easily dance to in a variety of ways. And again, it sounds like Latin influenced, which is dope. It's quite catchy beyond that, but it just makes you want to stomp to it, you know? I really enjoy it. Am I the only one who's on this boat?
I like it. I don't think I like it as much as the opening, but it's a good ending.
I don't
like
really have any strong feelings.
I like the
for it.
part with like that very I don't know what you would call it. I guess kind of distorted like keyboard sound. I'm not sure what you would call that kind. I think you know what I'm talking about, right?
I do. I'm finding it difficult to articulate it though.
Yeah.
Much like you are.
I'm not sure how you describe it, but I actually really like that part.
It's got a lot to love. I don't know if the same person's responsible for the opening and the ending, but for a show with ultimately very little going on, it's got strong musical direction, which I will take any day of the week. So in a complete shocker, Steve, I found something to love about Bubuki's.
Oh no!
And that was actually the ending theme.
I honestly don't even remember it.
Well, if you remember it stylistically, it sounds like extremely shitty and generic nu metal, which is not a glowing recommendation. But so to kind of contrast this with Dimension W's opening, I think this song has a very good use of very processed sounding vocals. The song kind of opens and ends with a very subdued, just kind of like a grinding beat almost, and the vocals are sung very half-heartedly over them, and the processed effect that's laid on them gives it just like a very detached feeling, which I think works in the song's favor. And once it gets to the chorus, I can't even tell you why I like it, because it literally just sounds like Evanescence. And but yeah, save me. But it's inexplicably catchy. Like I think it's fine. The chorus does have like one of my favorite beats in the world, which is just like 8th note offbeat hi-hats, open hi-hats, against the 2 and 4 snare, which is very simple, but is super great. It's just like it gets you moving. And when it's like a harder rock song like this with like the dance beat, it's just like high energy and very nice. And then the outro, which I slightly mentioned before, the vocals are they're turned down in the mix. They have like a more percussive feeling to them. I have no idea what they're saying, but I get the impression that the lyrics were chosen in such a way to punctuate the beats that they lay on, and it works well because it really dies down after the chorus, and then it's just like, you know, every chord and it just boom, 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 and the vocals again accentuate that. Works really well. I was impressed. It's probably the best thing about that show. Not that there's much competition. So Matt, help me here and help me talk about how great the ending theme to Sekko Boys is.
Oh my god, this theme is fucking amazing.
It's so good.
It's so catchy.
Why don't you lead us in here?
Well, it starts off with them chanting their names, spelling it out, and it's just great.
Would you like to
And-
do it for us?
Huh?
Would you like to do it for us?
Wow, you're really putting him on the spot.
I don't think so. Not right
Okay.
now.
Maybe next time.
But-
Tune in 6 weeks and
But-
find out.
It's very good. Like all the voices of the characters, all the singers just work very well because just like each the thing with each voice is they're all very distinct from one another, and it really makes each section so good when they finally, because I really like the structure is really good because it has all of them sing their part and then it has all of them together singing the chorus. And like, there's just all these little parts where one of them would just say like "Sekko."
Yeah, it's always Giorgio in the background.
It's just
and
great.
It's hilarious because he's got like the super deep voice, and you just hear him just prancing around in the back, and it's like
It's so good.
yeah, but it also works musically in addition to being like pretty humorous. Because like I said, I hate when people just shout random things on the offbeats, but I don't know why it works here, but it does.
It's just very good.
Yeah, and what I like, this is a minor thing, but I like how when they sing, they keep the vocal identity they establish just in their speaking roles. Because a lot of times you get a voice actress to sing and they'll sound very different because they're putting on some voice for the role.
Mhm.
But like you said, it's very easy to distinguish who is singing when they're singing together. You can pick out their parts, and it just makes it feel like a real group made of statues.
Mhm.
But it's like this show is pretty heavily into meme show status, even if it's legitimately good. But this this is just a good pop song, like by any
Yeah.
measure.
It's just a very good pop song.
Yeah, and when you're making an anime about an idol group, that's all you can really ask for. So very, very, very successful in what they were trying to do.
Mhm.
Funk.
Yes,
Can I bring up something?
please.
Colin likes the Konosuba ending.
Oh,
Can
Oh my god, too little, too late, you shitbird.
well, Colin, what is so good about the Konosuba ending? Because I've only
Leave
heard
me-
it like once, and I don't remember.
Leave me alone.
I can talk about the Konosuba ending
Do it, Matt.
if Colin doesn't want to. So the Konosuba ending, despite this show being a really wacky, just completely not serious at all, it's essentially a parody of like all those other stuck in an MMORPG world animes. But like, despite that, it manages to have this ending.
The plural is anime.
Okay. It manages to have an ending that is just super comfy, and it has a very like kind of old countryside. I'm not really sure how to describe it. Like just
Is it Celtic?
yeah, I guess like Celtic sounding just theme to it. And also you have another instance where all the female characters have their own part and then they all sing together, and it just works very well. It's just very it's a very different kind of feel from the show itself, but it's like a nice kind of cool down to everything you just witnessed in each episode.
Neat. I'm excited to hear it once I pick the show back
Yeah,
up.
Oh, I forgot you dropped it.
It's
I was
also-
wondering why you weren't saying anything.
it's very different from like any other ending this season.
Yeah, it's pretty unique.
Well, I've gone on and on about how that's a good quality to have, so
Mhm.
hope it holds up. So Matt, let's have a fight, you and I.
Okay.
I want you to tell me why the ending theme to Dimension W isn't a mess.
Oh. The funny thing is, it's okay. The ending theme of Dimension W is actually probably my favorite this season so far. It's just so fucking good. Like I really love the sound of the guitar. I really love the drums are they're not crazy in the song, but just the one part where there's like a lot of heavy use of the Jesus Christ. Double pedal, I guess.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
The double pedal, I get. Like, it uses a lot of that. It's just very... Like, the one part of the song where, like, you see, like, the camera is kind of, like, going in a circle around Mira, and, like, the grass is moving by really fast. And and you have, like, the really hard thumping bass and the really hard thumping... Like, the guitar, I think, is doing, like, these kind of fast triplets or something. And then you have the singer has such a like really strong, clear voice that just is really awesome sounding. I don't know. It's just a really good song.
I actually agree with Matt. I love this ending too, and I think the reason why is that it sounds more like an opening than an ending.
Yeah.
I like how high energy it is. Compared to a lot of most endings in anime, which are a lot softer and slower paced. Which is fine. I don't mind that, but I like that this feels more like an opening, and also along with the actual opening of the show seems to suit it very well.
Yeah.
So the complaint that I have with it is that I think that it lacks like a real discernible melody that one could latch onto as the listener. And there's nothing really to anchor me to it as it just moves through these different sections. It doesn't feel very cohesive.
I can understand that. Like, it kind of just has these, like, different sections that... Like, it feels like there should be more to each section.
Yeah, to me, this exists as a good counterweight to the opening to Haruchika, which also was very dynamic, but felt like it had more glue holding it together.
Yeah, I understand that actually completely. I get what you're going with that.
I do like the there's towards the end, there's like one measure or half a measure where the instruments cut out and the vocals kind of reach their peak, and then they come back in, and I think that does sound nice. I'm not completely on board with the vocalist, but that part they do a good job. But earlier in the season you said that you liked how this vocalist is very atypical from the type of vocalist you hear in openings and endings.
Yes.
And I do agree with that. And variety is good, but I'm not in love with his performance on the whole.
Okay. I mean,
and that's all I can really
say.
It's just an opinion thing, so it's not like something you can really rebut. But yeah, But anything else you want to say about it?
Not really.
Okay. Now, yes.
Can I steer the conversation?
Yeah.
Because I noticed you haven't brought up the ending to Erased yet. And I'm curious as to whether or not you actually like that, because I think that's actually my favorite ending of the season.
Really? I don't have I don't have strong opinions on it, positive or negative. I like it, but it's not a standout to me. The best thing I could say about it, and it's not even really saying about it, it's the point I believe I mentioned to you earlier about how the same person responsible for it did the ending theme to Danpo Keaton, which I thought was very good. But that's not a comment on Erased ending theme.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's fine. I don't think it's exceptional. And when I say that, I mean like a lot of songs I've talked about might not be outstanding on their own, but they all have like one or two little bits that I do find to be again, exceptional, like great. And nothing really stuck out to me with this one.
I don't know. I don't think this is like a song I would necessarily listen to, like the full version or like outside of the anime, which I do for a lot of songs I like. I just feel like this song is like the perfect emotional conclusion to every episode of this show. Like it works really well with the actual show itself. And I think that's what gets me about it. Like every episode.
I agree with that. That is a good point. It is very tonally appropriate.
It's very haunting.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the little animation that plays under it accentuates that, which is good. So it's definitely a good role player. I still am kind of ambivalent towards it as a song.
Are we going to shame the erased ending theme?
But in context, it is much better than outside of context. So yeah, I can easily see why he would rate that so high. That makes sense. So I only had one more song I want to talk about, and it's not even really brimming with praise. But I wanted to put in an APB out to the listeners. And Omega, this is your homework, because I know if there's anybody who will fervently pursue this to the ends of the earth until they find their answer, I know it's you. So, the ending theme to Musaigen no Phantom World. Towards the beginning, after the intro, there's a very distinct lead guitar line. It's at the forefront of the song. It's the first lead guitar line you hear. You'll identify it. And it's got a very distinct melody. I'm of the opinion, the irrationally paranoid opinion, that melody is actually just lifted from another song, perhaps an old standard. And every time I hear it, I'm racking my brain. What is this? What am I hearing? So what I need is the help of you, the listener. If anybody knows go listen to it. If anybody knows what that melody is from, or perhaps one or two notes off of, then please let us know. And then tune in 6 weeks to see if we figured it out. With the help of you. Really would appreciate that so I can die happy. But putting that aside, I do think that the theme is very kind of mediocre. I like the part at the end when I don't really know how to describe it, but it's the part where the female cast is dancing in the middle of the screen.
Doing the hip sway?
Yes, the hip sway.
It's super cute.
Which is very cute. But the backing vocals at that part do kind of like, they really just completely change how they're singing rhythmically. And it completely changes the texture of the song in a way that's much more pleasurable. And I do like that part a lot. The cute imagery only adds to it. But even without that, I think it's good. And I like that lead guitar line that's been haunting me. But everything between those two, I think, is very mediocre and by the numbers.
Yeah, I won't even argue. Like I think it's okay, but it's not something I would ever write home about.
That's anybody else have any EDs that they want to spotlight before we wrap up this section, before the credits roll on this ED?
Doesn't sound like it.
Nope.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're good with that. That was a good discussion. I thank you for leading it, Funk, because you're the only one who could.
Believe me, it was my pleasure to monopolize that conversation for however long.
That's why I put it in there. Okay, so we're going to end the podcast with one last section. It's just a miscellaneous section.
Do we have time?
I think we can fit this in. It seems like people want to get this off their chest, and now's a good time. So, Grimgar, There, half of like 2 people in this chat really like it. 2 people in this chat don't like it, and I'm sort of in the middle ground. So
I'd say more in the middle ground, but it's mainly just kind of
leaning towards not liking it.
yeah.
okay, well, who wants to really lead this discussion? Because it feels like it's been brewing for a while now.
Well, Steve, actually, as the mediator here, the one in the middle, why don't you lead this discussion?
But the thing is, I'm not passionate about it either way, so I don't think I'm a good person to do that.
Mm.
But why don't we just start off with someone who likes it? So,
Okay.
All right,
Collin,
let him have it.
So this show, should I describe the plot or just whatever? Let's just go into it.
Just a brief one, if
Right.
you can.
Okay. So, show about group of youngins, obviously, who get wrapped in or warped to a fantasy world, and now have to survive in it. There you go. And they survive by killing comfy gobs. So, Matt recommended this show to me.
In a bizarre twist of fate.
Yes. So, when I recently found out that Matt wasn't feeling this show so much, I felt hurt and betrayed. Because I think this show is not just good, I think this show is excellent.
Okay. Go on.
I'm not sure. Okay, because I'm just. Am I allowed to just go off here? Is this okay?
Just go. Just go.
Okay, all right. Because this show takes characters and scenes I think are familiar, but makes me see them very differently through its direction. And there is, I already mentioned the whole bathhouse scene, but that's actually more minor than this. In the very first episode, there is this scene with all the characters sitting around, and the character Ranta and Yume get into this just innocuous argument, and Ranta then he throws out petty insults about Yume being flat-chested, and he boasts about this sixth sense he has for big boobs.
You actually liked that scene?
And no, wait, I'm getting to it, okay?
Okay.
And Shihoru tries to maintain a level of humility by attributing her big boobs to being fat. Now, what I just described of this scene probably doesn't strike any of you as new or interesting. But when you look at the scene, I found some interesting stuff. There's no background music in this scene. You're just accompanied by the characters talking and some birds chirping in the background. And there's no funny sound effects or overblown reactions. The characters just kind of uncomfortably shift their weight around because this scene isn't funny. It's not meant to be funny. It's meant to be awkward. It's awkward as hell. And I'm betting you guys know this, but I don't think you guys might realize how important it is, how much it shows you about each character. Maybe your brains did. Ranta he's puffing himself up more and more to try to seem like a bad dude after he realizes how uncomfortable he's made everyone. And he's trying to make it look intentional. And Haruhiro looks totally weak and can't even bring himself to do anything other than to sheepishly apologize to Shihoru. And then Yume tries to deflect the awkwardness by starting to be playful with Shihoru and making Ranta feel uncomfortable. And the character focus on this show struck such a chord with me that it's probably the show, or I'm not quite sure because Erased exists, but it might be the show I look forward to each week.
It's funny because this is probably the show I look least forward to each week.
Yeah.
Are you finished? Or...
Well, I've got plenty to say about this show.
but
If you want to just weigh in on what hasn't quite clicked with you, go ahead.
Well, it's funny how you say talking about all the characters, because I don't like any of the characters.
Oh, jeez.
Ranta ruins every scene he's in. I hate everything about him, and I wish he didn't exist. He's just terrible, and he just annoys me, and he makes me not want to watch the show. The other characters are generally just bland. The main character is just kind of quiet. I feel like he's just there and doesn't really do much. The Boob Mage is just Boob Mage. Just like, I don't know anything about her at all. She's barely relevant. She's not even useful. Fucking Yumi is just cute, I guess. I guess the biggest issue I have with the show is that I just feel like there hasn't been any real character development, or at least they're just not characters I really give a shit about.
That's so strange. Because I was gonna note how much I like Ranta. Because
Really?
Because he's this annoying, loudmouth little shit. But the story doesn't let him be just that, because his attitude isn't just accepted. He has no like humorous rivalries that arise from it. His sort of I'm not okay. I'm going to use the word flightiness, but it's like if he's flighty and also on fire. It makes him a serious liability, and he's only just starting to learn to get his act together. Not only that, but like the story lets him breathe. Like in episode 5, it feels like the writers didn't really they're not talking down to the audience, because there's this part where Ranta makes some quick apologies, and it's part of a quick joke too. But Haruhiro comments, how it's strange when he apologizes so quickly, and Ranta doesn't immediately snap back to normal Ranta mode out of fear that the audience forgets that he's Ranta. They just let the moment breathe, and let whatever comedy arises from that feel very natural. And you say Haruhiro, I was very underwhelmed by Haruhiro at first, but when I really look at him, I see that he's meant to seem meek, and he's this indecisive, incompetent guy who's happy to follow Minato. Am I putting the emphasis on the right syllable there, Funk?
I have no
So
idea.
long.
I don't know.
I think it is.
It's
Minato.
easier. Well, it's easier for me to say Minato is the thing. But
Well, it's definitely
because-
Mo, however you pronounce it. It's
Yeah,
just a matter of where the stress is.
because Minato seems like he's got all the answers, and then Minato dies, and Haruhiro is
Spoilers.
Yeah, sorry, shit. Okay, we're mid.
It's not really spoilers because it's the most
But-
obvious death.
Yeah, it's a
Okay,
very,
yeah,
it's a very
it's-
obvious death, and
It's still a very major character death, though.
yeah. But see, and Haruhiro is thrust into the position of leader just because no one else bothered to pick it up, and he has this. Oh my god, episode 5 is so great. He has this idealized view of Minato, both before and after his death, and you can see how much he looks up to him. He sees him as this person who's keeping their barely functional party together, and it's only after the character they bring in afterwards, Mary, exposes their incompetence, and that scene that he has with Yume at the end, where he comes to the realization that Minato was just a guy about as qualified as he was to lead, and Minato was spelling it out for him in that scene right before he died. He was telling them that they have grown, and that they've learned to carry themselves, but they obviously still have a ways to go. And there's this part in episode 5 where Haruhiro kind of realizes that he shut out the girls in this. He shut out Yume and Shihoru. and because he feels so ashamed of himself for failing them. It's only at the beginning of episode 5 where we really and end of episode 5 where Yume really has any speaking lines on the whole Minato matter, and Haruhiro makes his first big decision as leader by refusing to take Renji's gold, and this was like such a huge scene because what were they going to do with that gold? They would give them like several weeks maybe of like good housing and food. They could have bought their soldier badges, but it would have been with those promotions, they would have been handling jobs that they just wouldn't be able to. And he gives it back because it would make him seem like a weak leader if he didn't. And that decision weighs on him because he's now making these leadership decisions. He's not consulting Yume and Shihoru about them. And he feels very guilty. And finally, the weight comes crashing down on him in this scene. And holy shit, this guy's voice actor is like, he's so good. Oh my god. And he just breaks down, and it's such a wonderful scene, and it's brought down. I do agree that Shihoru is probably the weakest character. It's kind of brought down a little bit by the end by the little misunderstanding with Shihoru that they have to address. That they'll address later. But even like earlier stuff, like with that,
I'll fully admit that the voice acting in this show is perfectly fine. That's not. I have no issues with that. There's
such a great scene with like the with the bathhouse stuff or whatever when they peep on them at the end of episode 2, I think. And then the first 7 minutes of the next episode is, well, with the exception of like the first minute of the episode is dedicated entirely to like showing Moguzo cooking and how much he enjoys that, and I actually enjoyed that quite a bit. But like the first 7 minutes of the next episode is about them and dealing with the fallout of that and how they kind of violated the trust of the girls in the group. And it's only like when he's alone with Yume where they kind of reconcile about it. And that's a great scene. There's so many like good like little scenes with the characters in this. And if I can get off the character point here for a little bit, the animation in this show is gorgeous, and I don't just mean like the backgrounds look nice and the character designs look way better than they do on the light novel stuff. I mean that during the fight scenes in this show, they move with such a set, like even the lighter like stuff like with Minato and Ranta and Haruhiro, who use lighter weapons, and someone like Moguzo, they move with such a fantastic sense of weight to them, and when they strike, it feels so visceral. And there's like mind paid to like continuity of where people are standing and how they move. They don't just move around wildly. And then there's like the facial expressions in this show. They have facial expressions. The facial expressions and the keyframes have keyframes in this. Like in a 2-second shot, we see Ranta go from anger to confusion to just a slightly changed expression that shows the realization of what an ass he is. And that's one without dialogue. Like when they actually are speaking, like they'll move and their faces will change in response to the cadence with which they speak. And this is such an underappreciated thing in anime. That's wild, which is probably why most anime don't fucking bother with it. But goddamn, I love this show. It's so great.
Has Collin won you guys over yet?
No.
Well, listen.
That's okay.
Can I just
wanted to gush
say
about
something
this
though?
show for you guys. Yeah.
Okay. One thing I will admit that is probably more my fault than the show's fault, but this is kind of another thing that I guess happened with One Punch Man, where the show went in a direction that I was not expecting and kind of disappointed me because I was wanting it to go in that direction. Whereas with One Punch Man, it was that I was expecting it to be mostly a comedy. With this, I was expecting the mystery aspect to actually get more depth. Like the whole idea of like them having these past memories, but they kind of like being subdued, like them having amnesia. For some reason, I was kind of expecting that to actually be part of the plot. Apparently, it has nothing to do with anything, and there's literally no reason for that to have even been mentioned at all, because they never go into that.
Yeah, but I'm kind of glad they haven't, because I feel like whatever answer they give is going to be disappointing.
I guess so, but it's like, why even have that there at all? And
I guess just to have the characters in the situation where they can get thrust into this adventure without having any baggage behind it.
Why can't they just be? And another thing is, why can't this just be a fantasy world? Why do we need these really dumb and kind of pointless video game
framing device
stuff in this? Like,
well,
I don't
might have a payoff later on.
I don't get why the video game things need to be there, because all they do is just take me out of any sort of drama that happens. Because it's like,
what you mean, when they call their attacks?
Well,
Is
I mean,
that
like, I mean, like when they were talking about, oh, we got these new moves, we used our experience points to get backstab, and it's like, okay.
They didn't,
You know what?
I would say experience points.
I know it's not experience point. It was like gold or whatever. Like they paid to get their new skills. Backstab.
Yeah, they paid to learn those new skills. Like they actually
the one thing I really want to say about this show, is that I would kind of agree with Matt, especially because like this setting and this kind of subgenre has been done to death at this point. But this show takes it with a level of seriousness and groundedness that none of the other shows do. So I very much, even if I'm not super in love with it like Collin is, I respect this show a ton for doing something different. And I think it carries it more, even in spite of even though I kind of feel the same way Matt does, that stuff doesn't bother me just because of how well the show does everything else.
And I guess the other thing is, I don't mind slow pacing. I really do not. But this show has no pacing. It goes nowhere. We are halfway through the show,
and
we are in the very exact place as they were in the beginning.
Well, that's not true though.
Disagreements.
Which is really annoying. Okay,
like physically they're in the same place, but
yeah,
it's about their emotional growth.
Yeah, it's about them.
I guess
learning to get their shit together. Episode 1 they fight and they fail. Episode 2 they fight and they succeed. Episode 3 they start learning to they find new places to start farming and they start actually making money. Episode 4 they get cocky and someone fucking dies. Episode 5 they grieve. That's total progression there.
The other thing is, these people are fucking idiots. They are the biggest morons ever. Yeah, but here's the thing. We saw other newbies. We saw other newbies. They are doing fucking amazing. They offered these people a gold goddamn coin, and they're doing great.
And if they told their story, it would be far less interesting because they're so good.
Yeah, which leads me to which really makes me wonder: is this world really that hard to live in, or are they just this shit?
They're probably that shit, as pointed out by Mary. They are.
So what? I think that gives them more room to grow.
I love that. I love how shit they are.
Yeah.
It just makes me feel like they're all idiots, because then when they get Mary, and they get her, and they're like, "Hey, Mary, do this same exact thing that got our other guy fucking killed, because we're fucking retards."
Okay, but they're idiots, and you know what? If they're the idiots at the end of the show and they have no growth, I would agree with you, but I think it's okay to have idiots if you at least give them room to grow. And this show gives them a lot of room to grow, and they're getting there.
Maybe it's just only going to be 12 episodes?
Yeah, yes. I believe so.
Maybe it's just my video game logic coming into play, but I would never say, hey, guy who is the person who pretty much determines whether or not we fucking die, go out there and be our tank.
He volunteered to be the tank. He made
rookie mistakes.
He's this fucking idiot too. He's an idiot too.
But they make rookie mistakes.
And that makes me even care less about his death. Because he has, again, the way that they make you care about him, to me, is just felt really weird. He just goes around complimenting everybody about their
No. I don't think that's it. It's because they don't really, because they make it pretty clear that Monato is going to fucking die.
Yeah.
But see, it's not about you feeling bad for Monato. It's about you noticing how much these people rely on Monato. And we see
Sure.
that very clearly throughout those first 4 episodes.
But then they have a 4-minute music video of them lamenting his death.
Well, yes.
And it feels like they're trying way too hard to make you care.
I kind of agree with Matt. I think they could have done that better. Like,
No,
I understand where they were going.
Holding on for like 18 seconds on that last shot, probably, I'll concede that point.
That's another thing. There's a lot of wasted time in this show. Like, with the fucking, like, the 5-minute music video in one episode and then another one in like,
I liked
the next...
the episode 2 one.
Huh?
I liked the episode 2 one.
I did at first until they did it again. And I was like, oh, is this just going to be a thing now? Is, like, it's...
We'll see if it's an even number episode thing tomorrow.
I feel like I went...
By the way, as of right now, I'm not sure when this is going to be uploaded, but probably tomorrow. Happy Valentine's Day. Here's some fucking anime. We have not seen episode 6 of Grimgar. That is not aired yet.
I guess I'll just end what I have to say about it by saying I just, like, the biggest issue I have is that I just really do not care about any of the characters. I don't care about what's happening to them, and I just find it really boring.
You break my heart, nigga.
I mean, I was starting to when I got to episode 5, and the way that they reacted, like, I thought that it worked really well as an exploration of grief, because I'm way into that. Like, you know, I'm way into
grief.
No, I'm way into the way forms of media portray characters going through grief and exploring how they deal with harsh situations and circumstances. I don't know why. Stuff like Ava is really good with that. And this show was doing that pretty well because, you know, I first started watching it and I was like, this is a real slow burn. And then I was like, all right, now we're on episode 5. And it's not really about where they're going, like, in terms of, like, the video game setting or whatever, but how they're evolving as, like, characters. So to see the setting take a bit of a backseat in terms of, like, character exploration and whatnot, I don't have a problem with that, because Ava did that too, and I fucking love Ava.
Oh
but,
my god, it's always about Ava.
Well, I'm just saying, like, I'm but when you cheapen that, because there was a really good moment with Yue and Haru, and it was going really well until we got that fucking gag with Shihoru and her fucking boobs and her misunderstanding that, and it's like,
don't bully her boobs.
No, like, it's stupid. Like, it was a fine moment. Like, why the fuck did you have to detract from that?
I'm curious to see how episode 6 deals with that, because episode 2 ended on a dumb note with them getting caught peeping, and then episode 3 totally salvaged that whole thing, and I'm just wondering, if episode 6 blows it, then I will totally concede 6 weeks from now that was dumb.
Yeah,
and it took away from the moment.
It ruined the whole, like, catharsis, really. I don't know. It's... I thought it was a step in the right direction. I thought episode 5 was a real step in the right direction for it. But, I don't know.
I distinctly remember during that scene in episode 5 when they were kind of letting it all out, I was like, oh man, so many other shows would do something really stupid, like have her lean against him and he gets super flustered about it, and that would just be dumb. So, you know, they make physical contact and, you know, they act like adults, and I was like, yes.
Yeah, right.
And then she pops her head out the window and just kind of jumps to that, and it's like, slightly less dumb because
can't win them all.
Because it is
baby steps anime, baby steps.
There, but yeah, it's like.
I like how I don't know, because I was with Matt for the first 4 episodes. I really didn't feel for anybody. I really hated Ronta. I really and I think that in this episode 5, Haruhiro starts to realize that, you know, they haven't really been treating the girls as, like, their I don't know, their fellow party members, I guess. Like he hasn't really been seeing them as standing on the same footing, and I don't know. I think that it's a real step in the right direction for his character arc. And I'm kind of curious to see where it's gonna go, but I've sort of given up on, them advancing that much in the setting because seeing as we're already at episode 6 now, and in terms of actual progression towards the mystery, we haven't really gotten anywhere, even though they have, grown as characters, which isn't a problem for me. But it says it's doing one thing and then it ends up doing another.
Okay. Well, I think we should wrap this up because we've been going long.
Oh,
but
okay.
I'll be very interested to revisit this conversation.
Oh, yeah,
in the
for
end of the
sure,
season
for sure.
podcast.
Round 2. Tune in, be there or be square.
All right, so that's gonna do it. Thanks everyone for listening to our very first mid-season podcast. I hope you enjoyed it and it was a success. And I think we'll continue doing this. It's a good way to get some discussion out without jamming it all in the end season podcast too.
It does save us from having like 6 hour long end of season podcasts.
Yeah, because that's kind of the track it's going on. All right, okay. Say goodbye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
You won't see me come until I strike, guys.